Thank you. Okay, y'all ready to go? Stephanie, you good? It is 7:02 p.m. on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. We want to welcome everyone out to the Highland City Council meeting. At this time, we'd like also just let you be aware we do have Council Member Tim Ball that has joined us via phone, and so he will be chiming in. He's present by phone tonight, just so you're aware. We do have the rest of the council here. At this time, we'd like to go ahead and begin with the invocation by Council Member Sarah Peterson, following which I will help us lead in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Sarah.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are thankful to be together as a council and community to review those things that our city needs and desires. We are thankful for the residents in SC to bless them with the things that they are in need of, and that they might be successful in their endeavors and engaged in the city, both volunteer and with policy and procedures. We are thankful for the opportunity to serve and ask thee that thou will bless us with wisdom and a listening ear. And we thank thee for thy many blessings. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we have time set apart for unscheduled public appearances. We'd like to invite anyone here that would like to come up and address any item with the City Council. We just ask that you come up, share with what your name is, and then also if you'll keep your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone here that would like to come up and address here at this unscheduled public appearances any items? If you'll please come forward. Just that we'll have you each come one at a time and address it.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, other faithful public servants, I appreciate your dedicated service. I really do. My name is Steve Hogan. I'm almost a one-year resident of Highland City, and it's been wonderful to be here. I live at 5335 West, 10400 North, just across, if you're wondering where that is, just across from Jess Adamson. Most people know where that is when I explain it. So thanks for taking just a minute. Really, my question is this, Mr. Mayor, and that is trying to establish ownership and responsibility for the wood fence, mostly wood fence with the brick pillars that runs along the Alpine Highway here on the east side. When I got here and noticed the fence, I talked to a few neighbors, and they all said, yes, of course, that's the city's fence, and we can't do anything to that. Don't touch it. Call the city, and they will repair or do anything with the fence. In the last year, I've talked to most people along that share that fence along their property line, and they've all agreed that since they've been here, that has been the practice, is that the city has taken care of and maintained that fence. And so in the meantime, I've heard conflicting stories, and so I at least wanted to open that conversation here tonight and try to find out and get clarification on that fence. One more thing before I do with my allotted time, and that is please consider a couple of factors, and that is just simply, obviously the Alpine Highway is one of the main corridors through our great city. People see it every day. People see the state of the current fence. If it is determined at some point that becomes owner's responsibility, then I'm afraid we would open ourselves up as a city to a hodgepodge of different types and maintenance of fences or no fences at all. Consider the safety and value of the safety and peace of mind of those that live along there. We've seen in the news quite a few times in the last few years where unfortunate and tragic events have happened where people have died from vehicles that have gotten out of control. We know that we see a lot of that along the highway, a lot of fast cars and fast motorcycles going along the highway. So consider the safety. The beautification, again, like I mentioned, for the city, it is it can be a point of positive conversation instead of negative conversation. And finally, it's pretty obvious that that fence has filled its measure of creation for the last 20-plus years. And it's due for replacement. And if we're going to replace it, why not replace it with something that will last, that will outlast all of us, with little to no maintenance, and something that we can all be proud of as a city. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate this chance to begin this conversation.
Okay. It's okay. I appreciate you coming in, Steve. And I know we have another comment, but maybe before we do that, we've had a couple of, so thank you. We've had others that have inquired over the last little bit on this. So I've asked staff to look into if there's any minutes when the developments came in along that corridor, and to look at it. And then as a council, you know, if you wanted to say if it's something we want to bring back as agenda item, we can. But maybe we can have our city administrator, Erin Wells, maybe share with what she's been able to find out.
I'd be happy to, Mayor. There has been confusion over the ownership of that fence over the years, and the city has participated in various projects to help try and maintain it from a painting perspective and other things in that regard. So we actually, if you remember, started talking about this in January, that, hey, this might be the city's, we might need to start thinking about budgeting to replace that. To the residents' point, it is probably reached its life age. So I had staff do another double check just to make sure, is this really ours? Because that is a big financial burden for the city. We actually did find minutes from 1995. This is a unique situation, and there's multiple developments along that road, right? There's not just one, but minutes from one of the developments do clearly state that the city owns, maintains everything from back of curb to edge of fence, and the fence is the homeowner's responsibility in terms of maintenance, replacement, anything of that sort. I know others have said other things in the past, but that's kind of staff's position where we're at this point, the minutes that we can find. Things to consider. As the resident stated, if our final determination is, yes, it's the homeowner's fence, we do open ourselves up to, if they meet fence code, they can do whatever they want, right? You know, they could do, we approved like some fancy horse paneling, some metal fencing, right? Vinyl fencing, right? And so it could look varied along Alpine Highway. Another one of our major corridors, 10400 North on the west side, has that actually, where homeowners have put up their fences what they want them to be, and it has been a varied look. So if the council wants to change that, wants to make sure that it's uniform, what we would have to do is adopt a text amendment to change our fence code and say, but just on Alpine Highway, it all has to be X, you know, a stone fence or whatever you would want it to be if you want it to be a uniform look. But the city's position at this point is it is the homeowner's fence, and as long as they meet fence code, they can change the fence.
So council, if we want, we can bring it as an agenda item to discuss, or as a discussion item, or we just leave it as is, that we understand that that's the residents' responsibility. So I mean, it doesn't have to be a decision right tonight, but if it's something we want to move forward, we need to have it been brought back to another discussion item.
So can I make a comment? So the first time I was on the council back in 2010, we looked into this, and the decision was made that it was the homeowners. But at the same time, it's never been clarified. And I guess I would support if we did kind of a hybrid thing between the city and the homeowners. If we say, gee, we'd like the fence to look consistently, maybe we can help with it, because it's gone back and forth about who owns it. I really think it is the homeowners, but at the same time, you know, that's been really confusing for people, and I think that's one of the reasons the fence hasn't been maintained better than it is. So maybe we could do a joint thing together.
And I think that's a discussion we have to be, just be aware. Why is Alpine Highway? For me, we have to be careful. We have other corridors. Alpine's not the only corridor, Alpine Highway. So if we're taking on their fence, why do we not take on others? I think that's a discussion item that if the council would like to bring it back, we can have as a discussion item so we can look at if we do it here in Alpine, does it come over to North County? Does it come down 10400? Where does it go down Canal? Where does that all stop or start? And how do we can maybe get some legal advice as we're trying to make that decision on how we can do that. But I understand what Scott's saying. Hey, do we want it unified? Uniformed where everything's going down Alpine? That would have to be an ordinance passed. So just because this has been brought up, we've had a lot of questions, is this an item you'd like to bring as a discussion at a future date?
Yes.
Okay, we'll bring that as an item for a future date discussion.
One thing I do want to correct myself in, Mayor, and I apologize. This would classify as a theme wall, so there are a bit higher restrictions than, standards than just normal fencing. And so it wouldn't be just fencing. But again, we'll bring that back for discussion to say, okay, based on what we understand at this point, this is what Alpine Highway fence means, would be required for the homeowners and of that nature.
This is important timing because we're also starting our budgets. So if it's something that we're trying to do for any type of partner with, we need to have it in that budget time. So it's a good timing for all that discussion to happen. Okay, I believe we had another individual want to come up and address the council. Please state your name.
Okay, so I'm Maggie Stout. I go to Mountain Ridge Junior High. So I guess I just have a quick question for you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering, like, what the number one thing is that you wish people my age knew about government?
What was the number one thing that if anyone, probably just to make sure they're involved, like what you are coming in, knowing that their voice is heard, to make sure their voice is involved in the government, so we know what, sometimes we have our own opinion, but we need to hear from you so we know we're representing you. So for me, I want to make sure we're hearing from the residents to know what they would like to have us focus on and what they see is important.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Excuse me, can you state your name one more time?
Maggie Stout.
Stout?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Is there anyone else who would like to come up and address the council? Is there anyone else who would like to address Maggie's question? What they see is what?
I think you appropriately answered it.
Okay. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to come up and address the council on any item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and we will move to our item number 2, which is presentations. We have a presentation. Before we I don't want to jump too fast to presentation. We actually have a new employee for Highland City. If we could maybe have Jay Bachman come up. It's not on our agenda, but I just want to, if you come up and just maybe at the council. So we have a new, Jay Bachman has been hired as our assistant city administrator. So we want to introduce you, and if there's any questions the council might have, or some of us have known and ran into you in different circles, maybe you can kind of just give a 1-minute brief history where you've kind of been and how you got here.
Sure. I got my Master in Public Administration from the prestigious institution south of here, Brigham Young University, and then went to go work for the Governor's Budget Office in Arizona, and then worked for cities. I found my passion to be for local government, and so soon after that went and worked for local governments. I've worked as a city manager, budget analyst, community development analyst, and now I'm the assistant city administrator and community development director. So I've worked in four different states here in the Western United States, so I've seen government done a lot of different ways and hope to bring some of my experience to help benefit the citizens of Highland.
Any questions you have for Jay?
No, welcome. I do wonder why he's sitting in the city attorney's seat.
I was going to say that. I think it's more important. Our assistants work. Anyway, Jay, we want to welcome you here to Highlands. We're excited. You started on Monday, so we're excited to have you here.
Jay,
Great to be here.
Diet Coke or Dr. Pepper, which is better?
Dr. Pepper?
Jay, would you rather have a dragon or be a dragon?
Be a dragon.
That's right.
One of two. Okay.
You see the important questions the council's really...
Councilmember Odell, please don't ask questions you don't know the answer to beforehand.
Okay, well, thank you. We do have a presentation. We have invited the Alpine School District to have some of the representatives come. I believe we have representing Alpine School District, Rob Smith, Sarah Beeson, and Dave Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council and staff, and Diet Coke, and I'd like to be a dragon too. So, I'm happy to be here. We have Board Member Beeson, who represents this area, and we have David Stevenson, who is here.
As a Highland resident?
As a Highland resident, yes, and he is in Councilmember Rodella's area. And Councilmember Rodella, if you could please just watch out for him and keep him in line, that would be fantastic.
There's no way. We've tried.
Okay.
We've tried.
I've tried too, but I thought I'd ask for your help. Anyway, I'm a former Highland resident, lived here for about 15 years, and then had to move so I could have my horses at my house for my disabled daughter. And so loved living here and know many of your staff and many of you. This will be my last presentation to the Highland City Council. I'll be retiring at the end of my current term, and I wanted to come personally and thank members of this council for their service, for their goodness, and for the opportunity that I've had to both live here and to serve the students of this community. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize our superintendent and would like to excuse him. He wanted to be here this evening, but he was home. His son just opened his mission call. He's going to Ireland, Scotland, and I'm super excited for Tate and their family. So please, he sends his well wishes and his desire to be here. What we've prepared for you is just a simple sheet, no PowerPoint. Just wanted to give you some quick facts about students and schools in your community. You've got the school information up above. One thing that's different from last time we shared this information is one of the council members from one of the cities we met with. I think it was Councilmember Bills when we met with Mayor Yu and the other two mayors, and then the other council member from Cedar Hills. They asked for building capacities, and so we've added that into these so people can see kind of what's the capacity of the building and then how many students are there. Investment in capital projects in the Highland City area, you can see that down below. I just wanted to point out, if you've been up to Lone Peak, you've known that we've tore out the bleachers on the west side. We've reoriented the field, and David Stevenson was just showing me pictures of the construction as of just a day or two ago, and they'll be ready for this fall, or actually for this spring sports. So that's been another big project that's not included in these current numbers. Our schools here do a fabulous job. It's because we have great kids. We have amazing parents and fabulous educators. Graduation rate for Lone Peak's one of the highest. In Alpine, one of the highest in the state, and something we're proud of but not satisfied. There still are kids that are not achieving that initial benchmark, and we've got more to do. But with that, I thought we'd just spend more time if you have questions for us, for me. I do have to note, I'll be teaching tonight at BYU, and so the heavy questions, if you have, I might need to defer. Fortunately, it's the BYU at a satellite campus in American Fork, so it's not too far away.
So if it's okay, Rob, I'll try.
Fire away.
I know there's some things that you specifically have responsibility with at the district.
Yeah.
We've noticed over the last year a lot of focus on if, when, how would Alpine School District split. I know that you've been very heavily involved doing some studies. Is the Alpine School District waiting for staff to put together data to say, hey, this is some options, or has Alpine School District ever commissioned something as an outside study? So, I mean, the reason I look at it, if it's staff doing it, sometimes I'd have to think that staff could be a little concerned because they'd have to wonder how their job might be affected if their data shows that it might be time to split. Has there been a discussion about doing an outside study so it's independent?
Yeah. I'm retiring. Did I say that?
I know that.
So I'm going to say what I want to say and when I want to say it. Because the board can tell me to be gone tomorrow, and they're still going to pay me out through the end of the term because they've already signed my thing. But anyway, but that being said, it is my professional obligation to give them the best data. My team put together a study 2 years ago, and it said the board needs to consider a restructure of Alpine School District and have a vote of the public, a non-binding vote, or a community survey in 2025. That was my team's recommendation. The board said, thank you, Rob, and this was in 2021, and we shared that information with you, Mayor, when you came and met with us the other day. It's on our website. The public can get out and see all of the data we put together. We looked at 2-district scenario, we looked at a 3-district scenario. And so that information, we're courageous enough to say what needs to be said. Some people like the data, some people don't. Well, that's just tough. At some point, that conversation needs to be had. Our board studied it on February 28th again, and they said, thank you, Rob, for this information. Now, here's about 20 more things we want you to go back and look at and bring recommendations back to the board, which my staff is now in the middle of budget, just finishing out the legislative session. All of the other things are going on, maybe some boundaries and a few other things we're talking about. We will put that information together for our elected officials, report back to them, and then they will tell us what we do next. But no, hiring a third party, we have a professional obligation to the taxpayers of this community, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay. Anyone want to ask any?
Yeah, I have some questions. Tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up in Pleasant Grove, so I graduated through Alpine School District. My uncle served on the school board for many years. This is 50 years ago, and was president of the school board and served in a national organization of school boards. So we've always been advocates of Alpine School District. One of the concerns I have as the school district has grown, and you've got a lot of growing pains, in the city of Highland, 73% of our property tax goes to the Alpine School District. We run the city on 11% of our property tax. So your budget in our property tax is 7 times what we get. And, you know, I'm a little... If they're not going to divide the school district at some point, has there been any consideration to expand your board? Because with all due respect to Sarah, and she and her husband are great citizens and serve the people, we in Highland and Cedar Hills and Alpine really don't think we have much of a representative on the school board because she has such a wide area. And especially with the demographics in Highland, we're paying a lot of property tax in the school district, and it's kind of like what started the American Revolution, you know, taxation without representation. We don't think we're being represented very well for as much income as goes into the Alpine School District, which is much more than we get as a city from our citizens to run our city, if you understand what I mean. So we depend on sales tax and a bunch of other things. But has there been any discussion about expanding the school board so there's more representatives from other cities?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your family's service to our community. I know it's something that you value. And yes, our board, actually, when we did our study in 2021, we said there are multiple pieces of legislation that need to be passed. Our board sponsored, and I worked with the legislator to get a bill passed that would expand our board to up to 9 members. So yes, we have done that. We got the bill passed last year. The second bill we worked on this year was to allow, if the district splits, to create a service center so that you have some economies of scale, that you can have your back office functions supporting multiple districts and keep the cost to taxpayers lower. We sponsored that bill. It passed this session. There's one more that we're working on, hopefully next year. But we said in that 2021 study, we said these are things policy-wise needs to change. And we have been actively doing that. So yes, great question. We've done it. So now the board will determine when they go for an expansion or when they don't, when they go for a restructuring or if they don't. That's in the hands of our board.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that because I think there needs to be more representation from all the communities. The other question I have is I hear there's some discussion about shutting down Mountain Ranch Junior High and turning it into a STEM school. Now, I like STEM schools, but I think it would be devastating to our community to do that because you'd be bringing traffic from all over the Alpine School District to that school on our local roads. We already have traffic problems here in Highland and Alpine, especially if you have to ship our students to other junior highs. So what's the status of that? And I want to say up front, I'm opposed to it.
Sure. You can get on our website. There is a district boundary study, and there's plenty of information out there. We are not looking at secondary changes for the current year. They are on our watch list. Anytime a junior high drops below 900 students in enrollment, we put them on a watch list. At that point, there needs to be additional resources provided to that school to support programs. Smaller the school, fewer the dollars that are generated for that school, and then fewer programs. So that's what's being studied right now. We have 2 junior highs that are in that situation, Orem Junior and Mountain Ridge. One of the options that we've looked at is, do you close the boundary at AF Junior and have the 400 students that choose to go to AF Junior go back to Mountain Ridge? If you do, that school would then have about 1,300 kids. Mountain Ridge would have about 1,400 or 1,500 kids. That's a solution. So we'll be studying that next year. So thank you for your feedback, and I'll take that back.
What about the STEM school?
We're looking at a STEM school, but we're looking at a STEM school in Lehigh. We have property in Lehigh. It's being ideated now. We're not ready to talk about all the details, but we are looking at that. One of the ideas that was kicked around for secondary is have a STEM school in the north and a STEM school in the south, but that's just one of the ideas we're kicking around.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great questions. Mayor, if I don't have any other burning questions, rwsmith@alpinedistrict.org. Check with Councilmember Bills. She can give me my cell number, give me a call, send me a text. If I can help and support, the information on district restructure is on our website. So if any of you have any interest, it's out there. We'd encourage you to look at it. Give us feedback and questions. And if you'd like to know about public finance and how schools are funded, that's what I'm teaching at BYU tonight. So I'd love for you to come on down anytime.
Oh, this is much funner.
Okay.
So thank you for being here, Rob. We're going to maybe invite Sarah, just because
That'd be
I don't know if we've had you come to the council before, since you're our elected representative here at the school board, is that, just maybe kind of introduce yourself, and then if we have some questions for Sarah.
Sure. Rob, thank you for all the years.
Yeah, Rob, this is the last time we're going to see you, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to miss Rob. He's going to be a hard one to replace. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Sarah Beeson, and my husband and I live in American Fork, and we've been there almost 20 years. He's a teacher there at American Fork High School, and so we have 5 children and 6 grandsons, no granddaughters yet. And I've been on the board for 4 years and have just started my 2nd term. So, do you have any questions for me that I can answer?
One question, Sarah, I don't know if we have a Ridgeview development that is south of the high school. As I look across the elementaries, do you know what elementary most of those kids will be going to?
I think we talked. Yeah, David's going to look that up for sure. And while
We're just starting to have a lot of individuals moving in, so I was just wondering I don't know if it's the one in Cedar Hills
They're
or.
mostly Cedar Ridge.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Okay.
While he's looking that up, Councilman Smith, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 questions. I appreciate the service you and your husband have given over the years to American Fork and the library down there and different things, because I've been involved with American Fork Library. But one of my concerns is, and I brought that up before, I think you need a bigger board to serve the population and different things, especially because the citizens up here, because of demographics, pour in a lot of property tax. And we need representation. And so I would request of you that you periodically check in with us and kind of update us on what's going on with the school board, because one of the interesting things is I've been on the city council is we have tremendous accountability as city council, but we have a very relative small budget that we're very accountable for. The school district has this huge budget, and you only have a small number of people who are accountable for that. And I think as an elected official, I would like to hear from you what's going on at the school district level, because I'd like to be able to attend all your meetings, but I don't have time to do that. And we have a lot of, concerns. We have a lot of trouble with traffic around Lone Peak High School. The solution in the past has always been build more roads. I think we need to come up with kind of a better solution than that. And we have a lot of issues like, discussion about the STEM school and changing boundaries and all that. We'd like to have at least some information about that and some input to that, because you represent us on the school board. And you're spending 75% of my property tax. And that's a lot of money for a lot of people here. So I would really appreciate it if you'd come once in a while, because I think this is the first time I've had the opportunity to meet you.
Yeah, we have our meetings almost on the Tuesdays, 2 of the Tuesdays of the month. And you haven't seen us, but this has been perfect because we're on an off night tonight. And so on those off nights, I can make arrangements and talk to Stephanie and see if I can come and just be on your agenda. I would love to fill you in on things.
Give us a short presentation about what's being discussed, and especially things that affect our community and the neighboring communities. I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's especially, I mean, for those of us that have ecclesiastical boundaries, half our ward is, a lot of our ward's in Highland, and so there's definitely a connection there. American Fork and Highland are kind of tucked in there together. It's been interesting having a 7-member board, and we know that we're their largest school district in the state. There are some challenges that come with having a larger school board. The state school board has 15, and sometimes it's difficult. It's hard to come to consensus. You get a lot of different opinions. But it is, and now with Amber Bonner and I having to take this entire area, we had to run against each other for one seat between the two, and it has been difficult. I've been going from different schools in the cities between Cedar Hills and Highland, American Fork, and Alpine, and so it definitely has stretched my job and having to be there and to see what's going on and checking out the different schools and the needs that are there. I will say in terms of, the Mountain Ridge idea of a STEM school, that is just, if you want to talk about convictions, opinions, and thoughts, it's not even at the thought, it's a pre-thought. And those are just ideas. That had transpired because on February 14th of this year, we had a board work session. And in that board work session, we had our district leadership team come and present to us a study that we had requested as a board, and to come and present different ideas as they were studying a boundary and program study for the entire district, and to present that. It was within that meeting that idea was floated around. And so I got a lot of emails from citizens in your area and phone calls and texts of concerned people that Mountain Ridge was going to be shut down, and that was difficult, and I apologize if that caused harm or people to get upset. That wasn't the intention. Sometimes, and you guys can probably understand this, a lot of times for us as school board members, when we're meeting together publicly, it's public, and we hear things the first time as our board does, and so sometimes that can cause some frustration. And so, of course, when we would have something like that, I hope you would know that we would definitely collaborate with our cities, and we are interested in what our citizens are saying and the leaders of those cities. And so that we like to collaborate. And so just letting you know that was a pre-thought, not even a thought, and that's why you didn't hear more about that.
So let me ask one more question. I'm sorry to monopolize things, but I just had a lot of questions. What was the take-home message to the Alpine School Board when the people rose up and defeated your bond?
There's a myriad of reasons that we knew the bond didn't pass. One of those being that it was the economy in the spring is different than the economy in the fall. Mm-hmm. And there was some things that transpired there nationally that was a little bit difficult. You also had your mail-in ballots that were sent out about the same time as our tax forms were sent out, and I think people were listening to that. I am not going to, I'll just say it, I think the whole Orem district, and split, that whole discussion, I think, played a great role in that. And I think it was, for us as a school board, it was devastating because it left us with larger decisions to discuss. I think for me personally, and I'm speaking on just as me personally, not on behalf of my board, but it is a little disconcerting when we are just dependent on capital dollars through a bond. And that is concerning to me because of just what happened. Now we're left trying to figure out, ways that we can make sure that these schools are built, because there are great needs in the West, and when we don't have, and I think our team did a great job, I felt, like communicating of what the bond would be. But for various reasons, I think we had a lot of misinformation out there that folks didn't feel comfortable. And I can speak for my mother, who's in her 80s, and she's on a fixed income. And when she gets her tax bill, and it's very devastating for her, and we're conscientious of that and very cognizant of that as board members, and we know it is a huge responsibility. We are responsible fiscally for what happens in Alpine, and so that's I don't know if that answered your question, but those are some of the discussions that we've had on the board is, are we going to do this in the next 4 years?
Well, I really appreciate you taking time, and I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
I'm not trying to be up, I just want to get some answers to questions.
You bet, and you
because,
can reach out to me anytime. Now, did you have, he's got that answer for you, Mayor.
So currently, the boundary is split, so Taco Bell, everything west of Taco Bell and north goes to Cedar Ridge Elementary, which is on West Cedar Hills Drive.
And probably the reason why he's talking about, we're going to have a main road. There's going to be a road there in that Ridgeview development, so everything, that road going north would then go to that elementary, okay?
We'll want to work together to make sure we get this boundary right. And we love to put the boundaries in place if we're going to change them before people actually move there. It just settles them a lot better.
Where are they going on the south?
And then south of there, they go to Deerfield Elementary, which is on Harvey Boulevard.
So I think there's about over 650 units going in that area.
689.
689. Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
There has been concern about Lone Peak and whether they'll be able to have the capacity to take on more students with that area. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, hey, according to our sheet here, we have room for 460 students.
460.
Yes, before we reach the capacity. And obviously in our business services department, we have people who monitor really closely to determine where these students are, who will make up these students, whether they're townhomes, whether they're single-family unit. So a lot of it depends on that too. And so that's something we'll definitely want to look closely at also as this area is developed.
Is this sheet wrong? Because it says the enrollment's 2,471 and
oh, yes, it's the other way around.
2010. You're already 400 over.
And we have that satellite out behind the school, as you're aware. Yeah. I'll have to double check on this to see if that's correct.
Rob's latest Lone Peak projections show Lone Peak decreasing in enrollment over the next 20 years.
Right. Let me double check on this. I'm thinking that's not correct.
Can I comment on one thing that Councilmember Smith said is, I think it's a really good point that we both draw from property tax. And so if you're thinking about a bond or an increase in property tax, we would love to kind of have a heads up on that conversation because it affects what we do here as well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Noted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
We look forward to having you back too.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. At this time, we'll now move on to item number 3. We have 2 consent items, with number 3A is approval of the city meeting minutes from February 2nd, 2023, and item 3B is appointment of an alternate planning commissioner, being Deborah Mogg. Would anyone like to have Deborah come up? She is present.
Yes.
So Deborah, would you mind come up, maybe introduce yourself? And then we can then go back and maybe vote on the consent items.
Hi, my name is Deborah Mon, and just as Mayor Oslo said, I'm hoping to be an alternate on the Planning Commission, finally, after many, many years of not.
Deborah, maybe share with them a little bit how long you've lived here in the Highland, a little bit.
I've lived here 3 years. I have been on many city committees years ago when my kids were young and home, and cemetery committee. I was the peacemaker on the cemetery committee, let's put it that way, when we were designing it and all that stuff. I'm the one who did got us to be Tree City USA. That was because I was already a member of Arbor Day and yada yada. Oh gosh, I have it all on my application if you guys are interested. The Safe Committee, we were the committee that kept the gravel pit from coming over to where they now have a lot of houses right at the entrance to the canyon, because of all the trucks and the mess and kids crossing streets and all that stuff. And we were successful, which is wonderful. How often are you successful against, a big, huge gravel Library, when the library committee first started. I was on that for a little while. The other ones I stuck with, like cemetery committee, I was until we got the cemetery in, and I can't remember what, there's a number, but I did put most of them on the application if anybody's interested in looking at it. That's.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And this is kind of to Kelly and Aaron as well. So like in our last meeting, we had several references to this Planning Commission voting 4-0. But our Planning Commission's much bigger. When do the alternates get to vote? So if an alternate's there, could the vote have been 5-0? Can they fill in?
Correct. As long as there are not more than 7, the alternate can vote. So if all 7 planning commissioners are there and an alternate is there, the alternate wouldn't be able to vote. But as long as there are 6 or fewer, she would be able to vote.
So I guess my question for you, are you going to be able to attend Planning Commission once a month? Because we need more people there involved in voting. Because I worry about when there's just a bare majority of people there and voting, making referrals back to us. I really appreciate you coming and doing that.
I won't miss it unless I'm sick or something important,
Okay.
because that's why it took me so long to come back to the city, is I just haven't had time to commit myself until now to something that I plan to do long, for at least however long, years of whatever.
So there's been new laws passed at the state legislature, so the Planning Commission even plays a bigger role in development.
And I'm glad.
Yeah. So, welcome. We appreciate your willingness to serve.
Great, thank you.
More
questions?
If you appoint Deborah, we will have 2 alternate commissioners and 7 planning commissioners, and by code, that means we're fully staffed.
Whoa, yay.
So any other questions?
Come on, throw them at me now.
You might get some others later on. So
I know,
thank you.
I'm sure I will. After
Okay.
they read the resume thing, oh, let me see, I forgot about that one. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have those 2 consent items. Anyone want to pull any of those, or are they ready for a vote?
I'll make a motion. Motion to approve consent item A, approval of meeting minutes, and B, action planning commission appointments.
I'll second it.
Motion by Kim, second by Scott. Ready for vote?
Wow. You voted against it, Kim?
This is not, these
This
are
is
not the
not
results.
the vote up there.
Yeah,
Correct?
Are we doing electronic?
Oh, vote vocally, Mayor. Interesting, okay.
At least I'm not absent, Scott, no.
Yeah, that's true.
Mayor, do you want to go ahead and take a vocal vote while Kelly
Yeah,
sees
we'll
if
go ahead
we
and do a
can fix
vocal
this?
vote. We'll start, is Tim Ball online? Or is he on, Tim, would you like to go ahead and voice your vote? Saying maybe Tim's not there, we'll go ahead and go to Kim Bradella.
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Brittany Bills?
Yes.
Sarah Peterson?
Yes.
That passes 4-0 with Tim Ball not present. We will now go ahead and move to item number 4, which is a resolution of intent of this Phyllis Smith annexation. Kelly, I believe you're going to give us a little information on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Okay. Just a little bit of background. Y'all have seen or spoken with this applicant before. On December 6th of last year, this was presented to the council as a communication item at the end of the meeting. In it, the applicant kind of explained what public improvements they were hoping to be waived from their potential subdivision if they were to annex in. And so basically their goal is to annex into Highland City. They're currently in unincorporated land, they're in county land. And as part of that annexation, the plan would be to subdivide the parcel into 2 lots. And with our city engineering standards and our development code, we have several regulations that would typically be required of subdividers in Highland, and they were requesting to waive several of these requirements. In that discussion, the council did indicate that they were comfortable with at least having the applicant proceed with the annexation application and communicated a willingness to formally consider the requested exception. A couple council members expressed wanting to hear more research and understand more information before making a formal decision, which with this report we hope to provide a lot of that research for y'all. This is the vicinity map. This is the parcel right here. This is 9600 North. Here's the Lehigh City border. And then if you remember the discussions before, we have a city-owned parcel that is right here. A background from that, again, it is a city-owned parcel, but it is not dedicated as public right-of-way. It is actually considered a private lane that was allowed back in the 80s when this miner's property was annexed into the city. Agreement with the miners is if they ever subdivided, they would have to complete full street improvements eventually. But now, obviously, Phyllis Smith is requesting to annex into the city. As far as the annexation process goes, right now, the purpose of today's meeting and presenting this to the council is for a resolution approving notice of intent. So it's basically the council saying we are accepting this for consideration. It doesn't tie y'all down to any approval or denial of the application. It is just saying we are formally considering it, and then we would send a notification to the county and other affected entities that we, or the city council, is intending to look at this application. And then after that, after a certain period of time, by state code requirements, we would end up holding a public hearing. And then the city council would be able to take action, either approving or denying the request. And typically this would involve an annexation agreement where we would outline any waive of city standards or additional requirements that the council wants to add on top of typical city requirements. This is a legislative process, so the council does have full discretion on what to or what to not require. I just do want to recognize that if the council decides to allow less than city standard, the annexation application would have to go to the Planning Commission for a recommendation and then come back to the city council. Highland City does have an annexation policy expansion plan. This parcel is included in it, so it's planned to be incorporated in Highland eventually. The plan also includes planned zoning, if you will, where the council at the time kind of determined this is what we would anticipate the zoning to be if this were to be annexed into Highland. And that area, because it's south of 9600, was planned to be our R120 zone, which we kind of consider our density buffer zone between Lehigh and American Fork. Something to note, the parcel does have enough square footage to subdivide in the R120 zone, but it does not have enough frontage on a public right-of-way. And so that's why part of the applicant's request is to use our city-owned parcel that is not right-of-way to be considered part of that frontage. Now I'm going to go through what we would typically require for public improvements, which is the staff recommendation, is just by code. And then after that, I'll go back over what their request is or what they're hoping to waive. So public improvements regarding utilities, we have each of our city utilities listed here. For culinary, because this parcel was included in the Highland Water Company's original service area, they would not have to dedicate culinary water shares. But part of it for the subdivision, they would have to extend the water line down that city-owned parcel and then pay all applicable culinary meter fees with that building permit. For pressurized irrigation, we would require water share dedication. It's 3 acre-feet per acre. And then as part of our development code requirement, each of those lots would have to connect to our PI system and then pay all applicable impact fees. Sewer, both of them would also have to be required to connect to our city sewer and then also pay those impact fees. That includes our impact fee and TSSD's impact fee. For storm drain, these specific improvements would be determined more at the civil application stage. Number of sumps, storm drain inlets, those types of things are determined based on the percolation rates of the ground itself, and so that's something that would be determined later. There is a Lehigh irrigation ditch that we found out over the weekend that it is abandoned, and it's on the west side of the parcel, and so as far as improving that, there's a cement box there that would need to be removed and just filled according to requirements with Lehigh irrigation. So it would be the applicant's responsibility to work with Lehigh irrigation, make sure they do it according to their requirements.
But that's not a big expense.
It shouldn't be, no. It's cheaper than having to pipe it. That's
Sure.
That's that. For public improvements streetwise, we, during the communication item when they first came to the council, we focused entirely on that city parcel because that was most of the discussion, most of the expense. And once they applied, we started looking further into researching all these improvements, and by development code, they do have to improve all roads that abut the parcel, and so obviously they get access from 9600 North, and so that would also be part of their requirement to put, there's no sidewalk, curb, and gutter there, and so they would have to put sidewalk, curb, and gutter and finish the asphalt there. It's a collector road, and so it's a 66-foot right-of-way rather than a 56 local street right-of-way. And then the right-of-way dedication would be needed as well. I'll show a quick map showing kind of where that line would be in a second. For that Highland City parcel, we would require half-street improvements plus 10 feet of asphalt as our standard when you're only doing the one side. And that would just go up to where the Smith's property ends, where the Highland City parcel property ends. An idea or a recommendation by staff would be to propose additional sidewalk going along the Smith's property past the Highland City parcel, just to ensure that this is looking at future planning when the miners eventually subdivide. There's no other connections for them, so it will end up being a cul-de-sac when they subdivide. And so it's kind of the idea of getting the right-of-way now rather than later, and if they end up not developing, it's a lot easier to give it back to them than take it later. So that was the idea with that. And then another, for that right-of-way dedication, so that parcel is actually only 54.5 feet wide, and our standard is 56, and so they're 1.5 feet short. We as staff are proposing, because the home is so close to the property line, looks about 8 feet from the property line, to only require the additional 1.5 feet of right-of-way south of the home to not impact that home anymore. I drew a quick image of about what that would look like. It's not professional, but this is where that 96 right-of-way line would kind of line up. It would line up with this right-of-way line right here. And then this is kind of reflecting that extra 1.5 feet of right-of-way to meet our 56-foot standard. And then this is kind of, again, preliminary drawing, but the idea of that cul-de-sac, getting that right-of-way now. We wouldn't make them do full asphalt curb gutter down there, but the sidewalk was just an idea to make it feel like it was already there. That way they build around it. It actually slopes pretty far down there too, and so it wouldn't really feel like, well, that's just from Andy going there. I didn't go there personally, but that was his recommendation.
So on that map, can you just go back to that? Show me how far down the curb and sidewalk need to go.
Just right at the edge of this,
The city parcel.
the city parcel. That's where our full improvements would go to. And then that recommendation is to pick up this right-of-way now for future cul-de-sac. And then another recommendation was just to have them do the sidewalk to the edge of their parcel here. Does that make sense?
Yes, the property down below seems like it goes quite a ways south. I'm just wondering, you put the cul-de-sac way up at that end just because that's the length you can have to a cul-de-sac in the city, is that right?
The point was, this elevation dips down a lot, and so for them to have a negative grade cul-de-sac all the way down there is not
hard.
Yeah, it's just unrealistic. Okay, so back to their request. They are requesting to be annexed in under the R120 zone. And then they are proposing to only have to bring the sewer, culinary, and pressurized irrigation lines to that southern lot through the city-owned parcel. And then they are requesting to keep that current asphalt road and to keep that, or have that width remain. So they are proposing to not add the curb gutter sidewalk or the additional asphalt. And then this is a proposed motion to approve. Again, it's just the resolution of intent right now, but we as staff are hoping that as part of the discussion that the council discusses possibly which public improvements you would like to waive or require or additional requirements, and then give staff some direction on that so we can work with the applicant to start drafting an annexation agreement.
So let me just clarify some things in my mind. So what they're requesting is that they don't add the extra 10 feet in width to the road. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Plus additional asphalt. Here, I'm going to go back to this.
Yeah.
So if you see, I mean, the asphalt doesn't go all the way to their property line either. It's about, what did you say, like 10 feet wide? Oh, sorry.
The existing lane is approximately 10 to 12 feet wide as you drive down in there, and so the normal city standard in this case would be to add half of a normal street plus 10 feet of asphalt.
Right.
So that gives you about 27 feet of asphalt that you drive on, plus then you'd have the curb and gutter and the sidewalk on the development side of the street, if you will. And then later on, when there was further development activity on the other side, then the other side would be built and finished out. That would be the normal standard. So right now today, there's only about 10 to 12 feet of asphalt on that lane. And so in one form or another, if we were to meet the city standard on this, it would mean adding about 17 feet of asphalt plus the curb and gutter and sidewalk.
Okay.
So, and what they're asking is not to do that half plus 10, but what you're saying, if the house next to them wanted to develop, and let's say they could split, I don't know if the lot would be big enough, they would then have to finish that as part of theirs?
Yeah, the other side, if the house next to them were developed or would want to do some major additions or something like that to their house, or the more likely event that would cause the rest of the road to be finished would be when the homes south of there, that's the area that's most likely to develop. Is they've got quite a large parcel there, and we would presume that there would be a day, and we won't go so far as to say when that day is, but that there would be a day where they would want to do additional lots there, and then the cul-de-sac would be completed, and the rest of the improvements on the east side of the road would be completed at that time. That's probably the most likely scenario, because the existing home to the east is pretty well finished. It kind of sits in the middle of the lot. Subdividing it's probably unlikely, other than, like, say, if there's some kind of major renovation or something that
So Rob Patterson, our city attorney, I asked you this earlier, when we were just discussing, what stops, if we approve this, how do we stop other residents coming in and saying, hey, you approved this for the Smiths here, I want you to approve this here, or this has now changed the code here? How do we protect that we just didn't undo everything that we've been working as a city to try to keep together?
Great questions, Mayor. Because this is annexation, this is a fully legislative decision with the council, meaning you have broad discretion to say yes, no, yes with conditions. That's what Kelly referenced when talking about the annexation agreement. Essentially, what I would recommend that, we can proceed with this kind of initial stage, but if the council's interested in tweaking the normal requirements, we would have to do it by agreement, and it's essentially we do by agreement essentially kind of a little zone issue for this. It's like a little PD just for this development, and it gets approved with the annexation. And then if that agreement doesn't come through, I would say the council not accept the annexation. Because you have such legislative discretion at this point, but after it's annexed in, then we just have to follow our normal code, and we don't have any real discretion. So you can build it in now because it is an annexation. It's a one-off situation. It is unique. So you could build in special circumstances for this one as it is being annexed. And I would recommend, if that's the direction the council wants to go, that you give us some direction so we can kind of start that negotiation process.
What would stop, I mean, by us doing that, I guess anyone can come in and start saying, hey, you did it for this property owner, I want to be treated the same.
Sure.
Are we coddled, that would be my concern. I mean, it's how do I treat this resident different than what I would treat another resident?
Careful of precedent, that's what you're basically getting to.
Yes, it is not a legal precedent in that someone else can't say, well, you've interpreted your code this way in this circumstance, so you should interpret it the same way for me. It's, you gave them you negotiate something unique with them, I want a similar negotiation. But the council can say, well, that was a different circumstance. You don't have to follow that kind of precedent with annexations because you can negotiate each one separately.
What was the reasoning behind the request?
We also, we have, sorry, Derek Rindlisbacher and Sean, are you here too, or?
Uh-huh.
Okay, we have both these gentlemen representing Phyllis Smith that I'm sure would be happy to answer questions.
Can I ask a quick question, because we were talking about precedent, different things. How many places in the city have we got a little city-owned lot that was bought to provide access for another subdivision in the back that may never happen? I just think it's kind of unique, especially on our borders and things.
Like I said, that one was done in the 80s. Like, this is rare enough to where most of our public work guys didn't know that it was there.
Okay, so it is very unique, is what we're saying. I mean, I haven't seen anything like this in the city, and I've been on the council quite a while. Okay.
Any other questions before we have the applicant come up? Okay. Maybe the applicant, go ahead and come on up, or the representative for the applicant. Please state your name.
Hi, I'm Randy Rindlisbacher. Phyllis Smith is my mother-in-law, so just trying to help her out. And can you repeat your question that you were asking?
Yeah, I was wondering what the reasoning behind the requests to not meet the code, the exceptions,
Really, I think it's a lot of burden for one single lot. The miners have a development agreement that was agreed to, I think, in the 80s, and they have already agreed with the city to take 100% of the burden to improve that lane at the time that they subdivide. And I think they're around 4.5 acres. Does that sound right, Kelly? So if they're half-acre lots, there's probably going to be 8 or 9 lots. We just think it's a better distribution of burden to not put 100% of it on my mother-in-law, which would take them from 100% burden to 0. The city is still going to stay at 0 either way. So we're just thinking we're happy to take a share of it, but maybe closer to, if there's going to be her extra lot and the miners might get 8 or so, could we take something a little closer to 1/8 approximately? We're happy to be cooperative and understanding, but we have to put in, sorry.
Okay, have we pulled the miners' agreement to understand what was in that?
Okay, it's kind of complicated. We don't have a formal document or signatures, but in that city council meeting where the annexation was approved, it was in the motion of approval that that was the expectation, that when they subdivided, those public improvements would be completed. And the evidence we have of that is part of that. So that city-owned parcel used to be the miners. And so the evidence that it transpired is just the fact that the city owns it now.
So now, if miners came in, would they have to do the full road, or could they just do half plus 10?
Rob.
Andy?
Based on the minutes,
it'd be the full, because at the point that somebody develops a cul-de-sac, if you will, to then develop off of, it's going to require the full cul-de-sac in that case, because they would be building the road to then put a bunch of lots at the bottom of the road, if you will, so they'd be developing the full road. One thing I want to clarify, though, is because the city ordinance only allows a 600-foot cul-de-sac, it's unlikely that the south property will be able to be fully maximized as far as the number of lots that could be yielded from it, because you wouldn't be able to get the enough frontage to put that many lots on there. Certainly there's a large land area, and I don't want to dispute that, but you know, the existing home, I think, is already about, the lot's about 400 some odd feet deep, isn't it, or approximately 400 feet? So, no, I mean, the property, where Phyllis's property, it's about 400 feet. Yeah, so the, you know, the road could extend another couple hundred feet, and that's to the bulb of the cul-de-sac. And so the cul-de-sac's not going to be able to go all the way down into that southern property, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, so how
there's
many
certainly
properties
future
could they
lots there.
do?
Sorry?
So how many lots are you saying that they could do?
I don't know. We haven't figured it out, but, you know, in order to maximize that and get the complete number of lots that you would for the land area, you would need to have more road frontage than's going to be possible with the current city ordinances.
Are Miners property already in Highland? Or-
Yes, that
So the
was-
property
yeah.
to the south is currently in Highland?
Sorry, it's just where the home is. So this is in Highland, the parcel is Highland, this parcel is not in Highland.
Okay, I see it.
Is that county? Or has that been annexed into Lehigh?
Out of memory, I believe it's county. I looked at it the other day.
So-
Yeah, it looks like from the diagram here, it's county.
My question is because I would probably be asking the same question. I don't think they should bear the burden, but I also worry about putting off the sidewalks and the curb and the gutter, because I think that needs to come in at the same time. So is there a possibility of a happy medium here where we can get the curb and gutter, we can maintain as much code as possible, but also allowing the miners later to finish the product? I don't know if there's some kind of happy medium there for us.
Are you asking me? Oh.
I'm asking Andy more, Andy
Yeah,
and Kelly more.
sorry, I was
Right,
trying to figure
because-
out similarly
Andy,
who the
yeah,
question
no,
was
yeah.
directed to. Certainly, the council, as Rob has indicated, you have broad discretion in this matter, and so I think we can find a happy medium. Something of that nature would be, you know, add the curb and gutter sidewalk along Phyllis's frontage and then widen to the existing lane. That would give you a road that does not yet meet fire code. The fire code in this case, minimum would be at least 20 feet. And so you'd be wider than you are now, because right now, like I said, you have, and I didn't measure it, I just drove down it just to look at it. So you have about 10 to 12 feet. And if you added the curb and gutter and sidewalk, you might add, you know, another couple feet there, but you'd have about, you know, say 14 feet of asphalt. That would be one option for a happy medium, but, you know, I'd want to let Chief Patton speak on that. And then, you know, another would be to say, okay, well, we're going to add the curb gutter sidewalk, and we're at least going to make that lane 20 feet wide instead of 27. Again, that's not the kind of normal city standard, but that would be another benchmark, if you will, some of the way there. I don't know how to explain that, but...
But Andy, would that make it, one, put the homes at risk there when they get built? And two, what happens when the miners come in and we need that road expanded? Then is that going to go into the yards of those folks that build
Well,
it?
I think in any case, and I made a little assumption in my statement, I apologize. In any case, we would want to ensure that the full 56 feet of right-of-way, at least where it could be, you know, feasibly developed with the existing home, is in the ownership of the city. And so that would say that when future development happens, and like I said, the presumptive future development would be the miners, you know, they would then finish the other portion, you know, as part of their annexation agreement, you know, for that western portion, which is in the county, right? The western lot's in the county, the western portion of miners in the county, and their subdivision activity. So.
But would that require pulling up all of the curb and gutter and sidewalk to
No.
widen the road?
No,
So
no, what we're
that's what I'm
saying
not
is that the
understanding.
widening would happen to the east. So,
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
essentially along,
Okay.
yeah, it would be
Okay.
finished in the permanent position along the applicant's parcel, and then it would be finished to the east as future development activity happens.
Okay, good. And I had a comment to that.
Like I said, you may also want to let Chief Patton address any of his concerns with anything less in a pavement width.
Is it?
So typically, 20 feet will do 20 feet's basically our minimum. The only other concern I would have is the depth and if we're going to need a turnaround if it exceeds 150 feet. So.
Doesn't that problem already exist?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what your question was.
Doesn't that problem already exist? There's 2 homes and you don't have a turnaround now with the 12-foot wide lane?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure just because we have a problem currently, we want to keep adding another, because right now your plan is to add another home, correct?
Yeah, and I agree. I understand that. We're just wondering.
Down that road, it appears to be 335 feet down to that point is what I'm showing, about 335.
So let me see if I understand. We're basically debating, so they're happy to do the culinary, PI, sewer, and everything like it's code. Is that right, as I understand?
To service that new lot.
To service that new lot. So the question is whether we're going to let them do that without putting in all the sidewalk and the curb and gutter and then widening the road to make it
Correct. Our
the
standard street
extra 10 feet or
improvements.
so. Okay.
I think it is critical to indicate that we are talking 2 street frontages, right? Because you've got the frontage and the completion on 9600, and then you've got the private lane, or current lane parcel. I don't know what to call that
Right.
street. The north-south running parcel where the private lane is. So you got those 2. So as we talk about finishing street frontages and get some direction from the council, we just want to make sure we get clear direction, 9600
Because you have
versus-
2 street frontages.
Right. You've got
So-
the 9600, and then you've got the new street.
Do you have a problem with putting the curb and gutter and the street frontage up on 9600?
I'm going to have to run some math. This is the first I've ever heard of this was tonight. So I'll have to see if we
But
can.
your concern is having to run it all the way down that road when we don't know if that other part's going to be developed, and that's quite a heavy burden for one house. And I understand she's a single.
And I
woman.
appreciate,
Okay.
but we have to, I understand the situation. This house could sell tomorrow to someone else. My concern is the city doesn't have to look at the financial burden upon this improvement. That's what I'm saying. We're trying to say, okay, there's a financial burden. That's the person trying, in my opinion, trying to split the lot. That burden's upon you if it's profitable or not. If it is, they make a decision. If not, then they don't make the decision. It's a business decision you're making. And you're trying to get an extra lot. And I think that's the question is, are we going to make an exception here and then just be prepared? We don't know. I understand what you're saying, Scott. Hey, do we have a property that the city purchases or owns here and not making that improvement? I just get nervous because really this coming down. Right now, we're hearing from our fire department, the road is 10 feet. They'd like at least a minimum of 20. If they're going to do 20, to get to what we're looking at, it's 27 and a half. Is that, am I understanding?
It's 27.
27, so it'd be, an extra 7, and they'd become in code with what we're trying to do. Am I understanding that correct? So our fire department's saying 20. If they do 27, they don't really need to come and get this exception of what they're asking. Am I understanding that correct? Okay.
The one exception that would remain that we don't really know, we don't have a good way to address at this point is typically when anything's, and Chief Patton hit on this, when anything's deeper than 150 feet, there's some sort of turnaround feature at the end. But with what the city owns right now, we honestly haven't been able to wrap our head around how you do that in the interim because the likely turnaround or cul-de-sac is on the Myers property.
Have you talked to the miners about them developing, or what are they saying their timing is?
He has no time frame, and he's not willing to put up any money, but he doesn't care what we do. So I agree that it's a business decision for me, but again, we're putting 0% burden onto the city before or after this agreement. If we don't subdivide, 100% of the burden is on the miners. If we subdivide and create one lot, we would be taking a portion of that burden away from the miners and upon ourselves. I think it seems like a reasonable request.
That's what the council will have to decide. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to open this up if there's any in the public that would like to come and address this item here. So at this time, is there anyone in the public that would like to address this item before the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Or if there's a motion.
I think we need to require the curb gutter, the improvements, but I like the idea of having enough road put in so that we know it's safe with fire and emergency vehicles, but slightly less burden for them. And then the miners can finish the entire road once they are ready to develop. Because I don't think they should incur the whole burden, but I also think it's a reasonable expectation for them to put in those improvements.
Can I ask you a question, Sarah? See
Oh,
if I
of course.
understand. So do you think they should finish the frontage on 9600, which is a small section, and then just put the curb and expand the road some,
Correct.
but not worry about the sidewalk right now?
Oh, no, I think they should do the sidewalk as well.
Okay, because I didn't hear any mention of the sidewalk.
Sidewalk as well.
Now, and 9600 would have a full improvement of sidewalk, curb, and gutter, correct?
So is it just what you're saying basically is if you're doing a compromise, what you're compromising is you wouldn't make the road as wide?
Yeah, and Andy can correct me. I think I'm understanding that currently we're asking them to do 27, but could we ask them to do 20 instead of the 27, which would save a considerable amount of money? But then when the miners come in and develop, they could finish that extra 7 feet and take on that burden and finish that road on that east side to make sure that road will meet code at that time, but allow them to develop the one lot only to the 20 feet. Does that make sense on the road? So trying to lift the burden a little bit, but also make sure that we're meeting as much code as possible with the curb, the gutters, the improvements. And so when the miners are ready to develop, those homes will not be disturbed. It will be to code on their side, and then the miners can do the extra 7 feet of the road.
So you're saying the Smiths would be responsible for essentially almost more than 2/3 of the road, and the miners would only be responsible for the other third?
I mean, ideally, they would
Be
develop at the same
50-50,
time,
yeah.
right?
Scott, they
Ideally,
don't
but
have to
that's
divide
not
right
where
now.
we're at, right?
They could
Yeah.
wait for the miners. I mean, right now, they're the
Exactly.
ones asking for the dividing.
Well, I know that. I'm just trying to understand what Sarah is presenting.
So Sarah, once again, I think what's really the only difference from our city code is you're saying they don't have to put the 27, they could put 20. You'd be favorable for something that way.
Mhm.
Everything else would be the same except for that 7 feet.
Correct.
I'm in favor of them annexing into Highland. I'm not in favor of making exceptions to our codes. I mean, they're fair for a reason. And when we start doing that, we create precedent. And I can think of every decision I've made where I've made an exception and I've regretted it. So for me, I'd like them to stick with what is required of Highland City.
I guess I agree with both Kim and Sarah. I think that we do need to enforce our city codes and regulations. I absolutely think that this piece needs to be annexed into Highland. I like Sarah's idea of a compromise. I'm not sure if that's feasible or if that is helpful to the applicant or not. But I like that idea, but I do think that we need to require code to be met.
Now, we require code, but once again, without the 7 feet, it'd be 20 feet. Is my understanding correct?
Right.
Okay. Tim, are you online? Is he on the phone? Tim, are you there? Okay, I guess Tim might not be
Okay.
there.
So I'll give my opinion. I'm kind of a city nationalist. I don't know what to call it. I like when pieces of parcels are annexed into Highland. I think this is a really unique situation. I don't think we have anything quite like it in the rest of the city, where we have this city-owned parcel that the city didn't even know that they owned for a long time. I certainly didn't know that, and I've been on the council quite a long time. There's a lot of things that are contingent on whether the people to the south decide to develop that property or not. I do try to side a little bit, or quite a bit, with the citizens, because I know we have our city code and we need to follow it exactly, but I'm willing to compromise a little bit on this, and the reason for that is because I really would like them in Highland instead of in Lehigh. I think it adds to the buffer. So what I would lean towards is, I agree with Sarah. I think we need at least a 20-foot road, and I think our police or fire chief would be happy with that for the time being. Is that correct? Do I understand that? I think as we're finishing up in the front that you need the curb and gutter up front on 9600 and the sidewalk so that it looks finished. I would wait to do the curb and gutter along the east side when the other people decide to develop and do it all at one time. That's my opinion.
Do we have a motion? Further discussion?
But, Rob, if we did what Councilmember Smith is suggesting, then is there a way then to compel this applicant to help with that cost, or no?
In the future?
Sorry, which applicant?
Current.
I guess we would have to write it into the agreement if they would agree to it.
To eventually put the curb and gutter in.
Yes.
At what date?
I don't know what the trigger date would be or how we'd set that up. Typically, those types of things are done where the first person to develop does it all and then is reimbursed, rather than the city has to go after them later to try to get more money from them, if that makes sense.
But it could still be in the agreement, right?
It could be. We can craft whatever agreement the council wants, provided that the council agrees to it and the applicant agrees to it.
Well, and can I make a point of clarification? Because I was really thinking curb and gutter in front of the homes on the west,
Yes.
right? Not on the east.
That's actually on the north.
Blank, is that
Yeah.
right? Am I thinking of it right?
You have the property on 9600s would be
Yes.
on
On
the
the
top.
north.
So
They would have to
9600
have
would
curb
need to
gutter
be
and sidewalk
completed.
there. Then the proposal also to meet city code, they have to put curb gutter and sidewalk along there also on
Along
the east
their
side.
side. Oh, yes, not along both sides.
No.
No.
Right, okay.
So that wouldn't
I just
happen
wanted to
until
make
the
sure I
other
clar-
developer came
Right.
in.
Then the other developer would come in, which makes sense because they're going to have to widen the road. We don't want them to have to.
Well,
rip
they'd have to
things
put the
out.
curb and gutter on that other side to be able
Correct.
to get their subdivision down the others.
Yep, okay.
Well,
Just
let me
wanted to
ask
make
you-
sure I'm on the same page.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor, maybe we'll just, I was going to try to summarize. I've heard 3 proposals. I just want to make sure for staff's sake we understand.
Quite
We
some
have,
unusual.
I think all 3 proposals say 9600 improvements be done.
Yes.
The disagreement, or I guess the options, are along that north-south road. Councilmember Smith is kind of the minimum is get a fire lane, 20-foot hard surface. Next level up was Councilmember Peterson's of 20-foot plus curb sidewalk gutter alongside the property. And then Councilmember Odella's was build it as we would require for any other development, which is half plus 10 plus curb sidewalk gutter. I think that's an accurate reflection of what I've heard. Great.
Is there a motion or other discussion?
I'll make a motion. I mean, it sounds like we're not in agreement here, but, so we can vote it down or go back to the drawing board.
So
But,
can I ask a quick question before you make the motion? So if the people to the south, I mean, this was the 1980s, that's 40 years ago, and the city purchased this little piece of property to provide a way for them to annex in or develop. That was 40 years ago. So what if they never do that, and these people have had to pay in for sidewalk and curb and gutter all down there, and there's a road that's never done, there's no development for another 40 years? I just think it's kind of a burden, but I don't know.
So
That's my opinion.
right now, the property to the south, which is owned by the miners, is currently in Highland. The Mark Mark and Darcy Minor is in Highland. It's just this parcel, so the road in the middle is in Highland, the property to the east is in Highland. It's just this one home we're talking about currently is not in Highland.
Yeah, and in response, Scott, I have no control over what happened 40 years ago. I don't know what their thought process was. I'm sure it was a good thought process, the best they could come up with at the time. But I can't make decisions now based on what their thought process may or may not have been 40 years ago. And I also can't tell the future. So what is the best decision with the information I have today, which I think if we had the 20-foot road, the curb and gutter and sidewalk, that would do for the next 40 years. If someone never developed, it would still make that road lovely on their side. It would give them a place to walk, a place to have tricycles and use it. And if it's never developed, they can still enjoy it, and it would be safe. If they do develop, then we can have the extra 7 feet and not put the entire burden on the Smiths, but have some kind of balance there. So that's how I'm thinking of it. So, okay, I'll just put a motion out there and see what we come up with. So I move that the city council, now I don't know how you want this worded, Rob, approve the resolution indicating the intent of Highland City to consider the proposed annexation. As part of that, only require the 20-foot road with all curb, gutter, sidewalk improvements, and all of the other requirements per code. Is that clear enough, Rob?
A motion by Sarah, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so there's a motion by Sarah, and this is just, once again, the only thing is it's 20 feet versus 27. All the other stipulations the city code's in, right?
And that's the west side where they're coming in, correct?
It would be on the east side of this property.
East side.
East side of the property.
Just 20
West
feet.
side of the road. Correct.
I'd just do a motion to amend it to 27 feet.
Okay, so I have a motion by Sarah, second by Brittany. I have now an amendment of Kim that you're amending to go to 27 feet. I'm sorry, there will be no discussion. We're in the middle of our motion, so. Is there a second to Kim's motion to have it stick to 27 feet? Okay, seeing none, we'll go back, none on that motion. We'll go back to the first motion, which is Sarah's motion to have it be 27 feet on all, or 20 feet with all the rest of the stipulations on the property. Okay, are we ready for a vote?
Did we have a second?
Yeah, so I have a motion by Sarah, second by Brittany on that motion, correct, Brittany? Yes. Okay, then we are ready for a vote.
And I apologize, we are still having technical difficulties with our electronic voting,
Okay.
so we're going to have to.
Is Tim, are you there? Tim Ball, Councilmember Tim Ball, are you there and going to be able to be present? Have you been present in the discussion and ready to vote? Tim is not present and has probably not been present during the discussion, so Tim will not be voting.
Tim just texted me and he said he is on. He said, I said, are you still listening? And he said, yes. I'm not sure why he's unable to communicate with us right now.
Is he going to be able to vote electronically? Tim, if you're listening, can you vote electronically? And have you been part of have you heard the discussion? So it's hard, we can't, is he online on the? So Rob, here's the question. If we have a council member, we can't vocally hear the vote and it's coming via text. If he can do it electronically, is that okay? What's that standard there?
For this one, if he can't do it through the normal electronic process, I would say count him as absent if we can't confirm his vote vocally.
So Tim, you have to electronically vote because we can't get your vocal vote as this. So when we come up for electronic, do you have electronic vote for this?
No.
Okay, then I'm going to go ask for the vote for Tim Ball, Councilmember Tim Ball. At this time, if you can vocally hear me, I need to have your vote or we're going to count you absent. At this time now, Tim Ball, Councilmember Tim Ball, is not present for this vote. We'll now, is it just need to be a vocal call? Okay, Sarah.
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Kim?
No.
That passes 3-1. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll move on to our next item. Next item is item number 5, which is an action item, an agreement with Dave and Brittany Meyer for a sewer easement located near the Highland Hollow Sewer Lift Station.
Okay, Mayor and Council, we talked about this on February 7th, and I'm just going to bring you up to speed. The Myers purchased the parcel that the city traded a couple of years ago to the property owner, this property owner here just north of the parcel. This was when the city acquired these parcels here that, we're currently in the process of acquiring or adjusting the city boundaries. At that time, the presumption by the city was that this parcel was going to go into Lehigh and would end up being open space for a future development for the property owner to the north. He later decided to sell that, and we went back and researched all the agreements at the time, and nothing in the agreement stipulated that this parcel had to go to Lehigh. And so when the Myers acquired it, they acquired a parcel that was in Highland, and consequently, we needed to serve with utilities. So we've worked with the Myers. They actually they went to the Board of Adjustments and got a variance for their pressurized irrigation connection, and so they are going to drill a well on their parcel to serve their home for both culinary and irrigation purposes. They'll serve that home through a well, but they do need to connect to sewer, and because we do have sewer within 300 feet of their parcel. But to do that, they've got to cross the city's parcel. So we worked through an agreement with them. They've come up with a plan whereby their sewer line will be run in this kind of crosshatched parcel there. It's a little bit circuitous because we need it to be out of the way in case we ever have to work on the lift station. We do note that there is a couple things we want to point out to council. The agreement says that if the sewer line ever has to be relocated, it is at the expense of the Myers. We do know that we have an agreement with Lehigh to run down through what's currently that road corridor that kind of extends into Dry Creek Park. I say road corridor because we use it as a service road, but it's closed off to people to drive, but it's that corridor that's in the bottom. So we are going to ensure to the best that we can that when this sewer line goes in, that it'll clear the Lehigh pressurized irrigation line, if you will, and that there won't have to be any relocation. But the fail-safe would be that the Myers would have to relocate their sewer if they had to. Often in times of sewer, we're concerned about, well, we'll be able to have enough slope on the pipe, and in this case, we've probably got the opposite concern. As many of you know, this parcel's fairly steep, and so, there's not a problem or a concern that way. So we would recommend that you approve the agreement as they have, worked through the conditions of the staff and feel like it's a reasonable resolution to a somewhat complicated issue.
So Andy, again, I know you just kind of explained this, but the only thing I'm really uncomfortable with is just saying, gee, if we have to change things around, you're going to have to pay for this. I'm kind of uncomfortable with that because it seems like it's contingent on what Lehigh does. Is that what you're saying? I mean,
well, in this case, I guess the reason I mentioned the Lehigh is because we know one major underground improvement that's going to come through there is the Lehigh pipeline. We know that's going to happen. The city's already granted them an easement. It's a matter of timing, right? And so we know that that's coming. So that's why I specifically focused there. But, it's unlikely that we'll have to move it. But let's say, for whatever reason, I'm just going to pull something out of the air. Let's say the city wants to build a swimming pool here for...
It's not happening.
Well,
Never say never, Scott.
I'm trying to think of something that goes in the ground, right? So
Right.
we decide this is the only spot that we can build a swimming pool. Well, the Myers would have to relocate around our swimming pool in that case. So we tried to put some flexibility in the agreement for the city because Dry Creek Park, I think there's a lot of things that may happen at Dry Creek Park, and that's a long ways down the future. And so where we can't foresee the future, we try to put some flexibility in there to say, hey, we're going to do the best we can to have this be the permanent sewer line, the one and only time you build it. But if we can't see the future, you can't see the future, it has to move, then they would need to move it and relocate at that time.
So it seems to me like it's going to be really expensive for them to hook up right now anyway. We haven't talked about any facts or figures on that, but I would kind of lean towards, and this is just my personal opinion again, that in the agreement we split the cost if it has to be moved. Because I think one of the issues is we don't want to move that line unless we have to, but if it's somebody else's dime, then there's no reason for us not to move the line. Do you know what I mean? And if it's our dime too, then I think we'd do everything possible not to move it. And I think that should be where I would go, because it's going to be expensive for them to put this line. That's a long
So
sewer
why
line.
would the taxpayer take on that burden? I'm sorry, Scott, you're asking the taxpayer to approve this sewer line, and if it has to be moved, that we take on that burden. We'd be better to say, no, don't connect. I'm just going,
I know, but
this is quite a
But
burden.
the problem is they're a taxpayer as well, and they're putting up a lot of money to hook into Highland.
But we never said
And,
this was a buildable lot at the time. I was going, when
No.
this was done, this was not, we never, when this was traded with Lehigh, we never put out a signal that there could be a home or how the sewer is going to get there.
Well-
That's what I'm saying. This was not the discussion at the time.
I know, but we can agree to disagree. I just think it's a real burden to have people spend a lot of money to hook up to our sewer, unlike a lot of citizens, and then say, oh, we're going to move this and you're going to pay for it. I just think we need to have some kind of safeguards or some reasons not to move that line.
Would you be movable to say, maybe put it out in the road now so it doesn't have to be, the way they could do it is not come, my concern is Lehigh, we've already given the easement here. It's a 48-inch possibly pipe that's coming there. This is not a small
No, it's not a small
PI
line.
irrigation pipe. And there could be a lot, and there's going to be a road on top. I don't know how shallow, how deep. They'd have to, I guess they could go fairly deep to maybe.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of depth there, because, this all flows to the lift station, and the pipes had to go under Dry Creek. So there's a fair amount of depth, and I feel fairly comfortable that Lehigh will be able to get over the top of this sewer line. But we've reached out to Lehigh to say, hey, can we have a meeting? This is coming, now that it's getting closer to them actually building it. Right now, I don't know what Lehigh's planning exactly for their pipeline, but just in a general sense, they should be able to go over the top.
Was Lehigh okay with a sewer line underneath their PI system?
I haven't had that specific concern with them, but they shouldn't, there's no state code that would
Prohibit that.
But our depth of, what you're saying is where our lift station, is it a lift station?
Yeah, we have the lift station
Is the
down
lift
there.
station depth going to be adequate that they can get down, if it be 7 feet underneath and hit our lift station?
Yeah, yes. To answer what I believe you're asking, Mayor, is our depth at the lift station deep enough that this sewer line can go underneath Lehigh's pipe? I believe so. That's my belief and at this point, I think a reasonable assumption. But we will have the coordination meeting with Lehigh to do all we can to plan and to address Councilman Smith's concerns he's raised. Certainly, we recognize the expense that's going to go into this sewer line and the entire project. Quite frankly, and the Myers, although they're not here, they live in Highland currently. They're wonderful Highland citizens. They've been very pleasant to deal with. Quite frankly, I tried my best to talk them out of buying the lot when it was for sale, because I said, this is going to be a difficult undertaking. This is not a run-of-the-mill subdivision lot. But they loved the parcel and wanted to go forward. So to some extent, I guess Councilman Smith we made every attempt to express to them before they came into this that this was not a cookie cutter cheap thing to accomplish. And they understood that at the time, and they understood what it was going to take, you know, to connect to the city sewer lift station well when they were considering their purchase.
And I understand that, and there's a lot of cost, but, you know, my feeling is if we had to move it, if we split the cost, because you've got 25,000 citizens splitting half the cost and one family the other half. I don't think that's unreasonable because they are citizens of Highland. I think when we take care of our individual citizens, we're actually taking care of all the citizens. And the chance that this is going to happen is very slim. But I think if everybody has to kind of chip in, it makes the chance of it happening even slimmer. Now, that's just my opinion.
So let me ask Andy, this is a 3-acre lot. Could they split this off into 3 different parcels?
No.
So this can stay just as
The
one lot?
topography. I have told them, you know, not that I have the authority, you know, you all have the authority, but in my discussions with them, I have said I foresee no way under which you could split this. Number one, they'd have to have multiple utility services to the parcel. They'd need to have the frontage and the grading. You know, this parcel is very steep. So I think that it would be difficult, and so I have given at least my opinion that in kind of no uncertain terms that no, this will never be subdivided.
Now with that, are we having any improvements along the road there? I know it's a Lehigh Road. Are they having to put curb gutter?
Well, it's already got curb gutter sidewalk and everything, because it was, you know, my understanding of the kind of what transpired leading to this road exchange or parcel exchange and everything is part of what happened is the parcel to the north gave some of the road frontage right away as part of the deal to then let Lehigh widen and put the improvements across the frontage there. So it's been recently improved. Okay. Now, is there a future day when that road gets widened, et cetera? I don't know, but at least as far as Lehigh's current frontage improvements, we've looked at it and said, well, it's improved to the extent that they did with that project.
I mean, so your question is, I'm actually was the one that worked with this property exchange with Lehigh, and I guess I always thought the property owner to the north was the one that was, you know, we were doing an exchange with Lehigh, with them, you know, it was, you know, Autumn Bridge was going down, so we kind of thought, well, this is going to be that property owner, he wanted to increase his lot, and it was doing a property swap so Lehigh could get the road widened there. We never anticipated at the time, we never discussed it being a lot, we never, you know, that's what I'm saying, it wasn't ever discussed that was going to be built on or anything that way.
When they, and I think, you know, as I talked to people, Lehigh as well, you know, you know, when they first approached the city, they've owned the parcel for, I'm going to say 18 months, I don't remember exactly, but when they first approached the city, I mean, the first thing I did was we pulled every agreement we could find that had to do with it. I called up Lehigh and said, hey, do you have an agreement that this parcel's supposed to go into Lehigh? Because everybody in Highland thinks this parcel's supposed to end up in Lehigh. And I came up with nothing, essentially, and so that's where we are here today. I believe that was the common understanding and likely was part of the conversations, but it just didn't make it into the documents, so to speak. And,
I'm glad they're in Highland.
I don't have a problem with it being Highland.
Yeah.
So.
And just, you know, so there's some public, if you look at the darker green, that's actually flat property that is surrounded by about 50 acres Highland owns. That is could be a future park area. I mean, that was, we saw this as a trade that we're getting flat ground by the rest of all of our park area. You know, that we were trying to shore up where there was a little piece in the middle. We actually have a little trail with, I mean, there's things all going through here. We had to work with Lehigh to give an easement back from this is to the south of Dry Creek Lake, and Lehigh wants to use that Dry Creek Lake as a pressurized irrigation, at least at the time they did.
No, they still do.
And they want to have a line that comes down to head down to the Lehigh area, and that was, you know, the Dry Creek Lake, this property trade. I mean, it was a
very complicated property.
Well, yeah, because we even had the agreement of Dry Creek Lake as part of this agreement. So.
Yeah, there was a lot of moving parts to this, and it was deeply involved. And
so Andy, once again, you feel confident that we should be able to service this, get the sewer down there, they can get the depth, that in the future, you're stating in the agreement, you'd like to have it, that if it has to be moved, it'd be at the homeowner's expense. Councilmember Smith has shared his views on how that would go about. Is there any other questions or input the rest of the council would like to do, or they like? I don't know if the applicant's here.
I don't see him here tonight. I did speak with him, and they had some family commitments, and so, you know, he expressed that he would like to be here, but he wasn't sure if he's going to be able to make it.
So after hearing that explanation from Andy, which I appreciate, and I'm sure you took the time with the residents so that they understand, if they are completely understanding of what it is they purchased and what it would require, then I would think that they would need to pay that in the future as well. So I would be supportive of this as it's written. I wouldn't pay their 50% today, so I don't think I would want to pay for it in 40 years either.
I'm in agreement with that, Brittany.
Any other discussion before a motion? If there's not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
This is not open for public hearing, so, okay, go ahead.
I move that the City Council approve the agreement with David and Brittany Meyer for a sewer connection easement, allowing them to install a sewer lateral across city property and connect to the Highland Holland Sewer Lift Station facilities, and authorize the mayor to sign the easement agreement.
So can I ask Rob Pedersen a question?
Go ahead. As he's walking those down.
So she's made the motion, but there's no mention in that they will have to pay in the future if that sewer line's moved. Shouldn't that be in the motion made by the councilwoman?
It's written into the agreement. So the agreement as written already contains that obligation. So
Okay.
if the council
What
approves it as
agreement?
written,
Okay, approve the agreement's what you're saying, the approval of the agreement in it. Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Kim, I'm sorry, a motion by Brittany, second by Sarah. Any other discussion? Okay. Are we not doing any electronic voting? Okay.
Probably not.
Okay, we will start with Brittany.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
That passes 4-0. We'll now move on to item number 6, which is an action item, which is a maintenance agreement in the Beacon Hills Plat I with Brady and Christine Giles.
That is mine, and I'm going to, sorry, give me just 1 second while I try to restart this. Which, don't know if that's gonna work either. Is any one of y'all logged in right now to your?
I'm logged in.
Is it showing up now or no?
No, it's not.
Goody, okay, sorry about that. We're just gonna keep going.
Hey, welcome to Open Space in Highland. I hear this every week.
Oh, gosh, okay. All right, so this is an application for a maintenance agreement. It's in the Beacon Hills Plat I subdivision. If y'all are familiar with it as Twin Bridges, we recently, or the city council recently approved some property sales on this, or adjacent to this property that the Giles did purchase. On July 19, 2022, the city council did adopt the Highland City encroachment policy and maintenance agreement that detailed that process, and also requirements for maintenance agreements. And so in that policy, part of that is that each maintenance agreement does come to the city council for approval. As far as a staff recommendation goes, we recommend that the city council look at the policy, just verify. We did do our staff analysis on this, but just to verify that it does comply with the policy that the council adopted. And then after these items are determined, staff recommends the city council authorize staff to execute that open space maintenance agreement with Brady and Kristen Giles. This is, sorry, a little screenshot from my little maintenance agreement application, but just showing basically what the requirements are in the policy. We do allow up to 2,500 square feet of irrigable square footage. That is sod plus any small vegetation or drip line systems that would be included in that. We do allow small vegetation, flowers and bushes, desert landscaping, small gardens. This outlined property is where the proposed maintenance agreement is going to be, or could be. If you see, they kind of outlined where the scrub oak is. Their purpose in it was to create that fire breaker barrier between their newly purchased property and the scrub oak. This is their requested maintenance plan. In total, it's about 1,600 square feet. Their proposal is to have it all xeriscaped, and so they'd put down some landscape fabric and either do crushed rock or mulch or other, xeriscape type. It would be depending on bids from landscape companies. But ultimately, it just would not be sod. And then they're proposing to include, they added drought-resistant trees. They're showing 3 on their maintenance plan. And then they would include a drip system to the trees to help them be established. Brady over the phone did say that their intent would be to eventually cut off that drip system. And then they would also include metal or hard plastic edging around the perimeter just to keep in those rocks or mulch or whatever they choose to put as that ground coverage. I also did want to clarify that their plan as of right now is to put a fence along their actual property line and then put a gate to where they would be maintaining, so it would be easily recognizable where their actual property line is, but that they're still wanting to have that fire break between their property and the scrub oak. And then this is a proposed motion. The only stipulation is just that the landscape plan or maintenance plan is consistent with what they submitted. And Kristen Giles is also present. Brady unfortunately couldn't make it, but happy to answer any questions. And if you have any questions for her specifically, I'm sure she'd be happy to
Questions?
speak to it.
We have the applicant here, if you'd like to hear from her.
I'm great with this plan. I love that they hit upon the fact that they are establishing a boundary between their property and open space. They're cognizant of the restrictions of water up in that area, and so they're trying to maintain what we need for water there. But I've been back to that property, and I can see their concerns with how it is now, that there has, been notification that there is some fire hazard there as well, our fire department.
And I just want to tell the Giles, they have been the nicest people to work with.
Yeah.
This should just be on the public record.
Yes.
And they never encroached.
Yep.
And they did everything through the appropriate channels. And so I just want the city to know that, how wonderful the Giles have been.
Yes.
No, and I agree. Like I said, it's an applicant that when an issue was raised, they brought it and said, okay, how do we work with the city? Worked through the solution, worked with their neighbors. They've come in, they're meeting what our requirements are. It is a pleasure. I mean, it's a pleasure working with you.
Yes,
So thank you.
absolutely. I agree with everything that everybody said. I'm totally in favor of this.
Come on up, Mrs. Giles. So, as we praise the way you've went about it.
So my name is Kristen Giles. We just wanted to clarify that we knew the distance that you would want us from the scrub oak and the trail. That hasn't really, I don't know if that's been talked about.
At one time, I mean, we talked about a lot of different things. I mean, one time we kind of said we want to try to keep away about 20 feet. That was not ever established, though. From my understanding, it was just a discussion only.
Right now, we are using this far northwest point of the property that we purchased as a guide of how far away you would like us to be from the scrub oak. But we just wanted to clarify that to make sure.
How far do you think you're from the scrub oak at this time?
10 to 12, I would say.
So, council, I appreciate you being, this is a great question, because like you notice, if we kind of say yes to 10 or 12 here, if you have some neighbors that come in, we have to kind of stay consistent. So I appreciate you. That's why we like you guys, because you're asking those tough questions that could affect. Everyone okay with the 10 to 12 away from the scrub oak with this maintenance plan?
I'm certainly okay with it. Can I ask Kelly a quick question? So we surplus that triangular property. Have all those homeowners purchased it? Or,
Every single one, yes.
okay, even the one with the small corridor out to the, okay.
One more question. Does the city council have any stipulations of what kind of trees, because it's butting up against the trail? Or do you want, is it
Now, when you're-
evergreens, deciduous, or?
When you're saying the trail, isn't the trail a little bit down in the brush, or does it come right up, it comes right up?
It
on
is, it is the one point, see how it bumps out? Right there. And so it's the one of 3 points on the trail where you can actually see homes. The rest of the time, you're in the scrub oak and you don't notice the homes. So our intent was to do something that is congruent with the scrub oak, that wouldn't compete with the scrub oak or hurt the scrub oak, but we just wanted to make sure there were certain
Kelly, I know
trees
we
or
had-
rules on
We
that.
had different landscape regulations. Is it just something that staff can work with her on? I don't think we have specific names of trees we also want to say, so.
Dude, do any trees even survive anymore with the deer? Like, I haven't seen an alive tree in Highland forever.
It depends on the tree, and that's why we're trusting our landscaper to make the right choice. I mean, we wouldn't want to hurt the scrub oak and put in a competing plant or something of that nature.
So our parks superintendent, our parks, he is a horticulturist, am I saying? But he specializes.
Arborist.
So he could, Josh could help us with that. So I would just recommend that maybe you work with staff on the trees. Is that okay?
Yeah, the council can either include that in the motion and just say that as far as tree types, that the staff will work with the applicant before the maintenance agreement is signed or something like that.
Or if
and
you
then we
trust
can
us
just
to
work with y'all.
work with our landscaper on that to make
Yeah,
the right
true.
decision.
Whatever y'all want to do.
It's up to you what you guys
It's
want.
legislative.
It'd probably be good to put in the motion if you want it to be maybe drought resistant, or if you want to have them just work with staff, or if you're okay with whatever their landscaper desires. I'd recommend it's staff, so we kind of have some consistency, but if you feel different, then we can put that as part of the motion. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the city council authorize staff to execute an open space maintenance agreement with Brady and Kristen Giles, subject to the following stipulation. All improvements shall be consistent with the proposed maintenance plan dated March 14th, 2023. And I don't care what kind of trees they put in, I think they can make a good decision.
So you're leaving it up to
Do you want to put that in the motion?
No, leave it up to the homeowner.
So
of
a
what
part of the
conditions.
motion, would it be the homeowner would choose the trees back there?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion by Sarah.
I'll second it.
I have a second by Scott. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead, and now we'll go to a voice vote. Scott?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Brittany?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
that passes 4-0. We'll now move on to item number 7, which is a resolution, the ILA with Utah County for the 2023 elections. ILA, what is that? Interlocal agreement for the election. Okay, all these.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. That's going to be myself that presents this to you tonight. Kelly, do you mind being my screen? Thank you. So this is, of course, we're considering the interlocal agreement with Utah County to help us with the 2023 municipal elections. In prior council directions, we have contracted with the county since 2017 for the following reasons. First of all, an election is very time-consuming for staff, and there is one of me. So one of our first considerations in the past has been personnel time management. And a part of that also is the restrictions on signature verification, as well as other state regulations required to run an election. The second reason in the past that we have made that decision has been also because it's much more cost-effective to run an election through the county rather than the city. As per previous council direction, this is not going to be a ranked choice voting method.
Thank goodness.
I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. So for our Highland City 2023 municipal elections, you're probably very aware of this, but we have 3 council seats that are open this election. Your candidate filing period is going to be June 1st through the 7th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That would be a Monday through Friday. So for your information, the 1st and 2nd, that's going to be Thursday and Friday. And then we will continue again with those candidate filings Monday through Wednesday. So
Stephanie, you're doing a Friday. Traditionally, the city offices are closed. Does that mean the city offices will be open on that Friday for the candidates to file?
I will definitely be here from 8 to 5.
Okay.
Yes, I will.
So, and then, back to that, Kelly, do you mind flipping back again? The primary election will be held on Tuesday, August 15th, if it's necessary, and then a general election on Tuesday, November 7th. So, in the agreement, it stipulates there's a scope of work associated with this. These are just some of the city responsibilities. I like to call these the city responsibilities kind of work the front end of this. So I would be handling all of the candidates, all of the candidate filing, the candidate financial disclosures, anything that has to do with those candidates, I get to do that, and that's really fun to meet with all the candidates. Anything with communication with the candidates, making sure they know when their bios are due, when their financial statements are due, anything like that, that's what we would handle on a very personal basis here in the city. We do provide the final approval on our ballots. We receive that ballot, and what I do is I review it, and then I have almost every other person in the office look at it too, to make sure that it is correct and that all the names are spelled correctly. We also have a lot of publishing on our city's website with election results, unofficial and official results as they come in, publishing the location of ballot drop boxes as well as voting centers. We're also going to be publishing a link for voters to get a ballot alert text. And of course, you as the Board of Canvassers will be canvassing the election. So, and then the next slide will show the county responsibilities. The county responsibilities I've kind of defined as kind of the back end responsibilities. And they're very technical responsibilities. They prepare and they print and they mail all the ballots. They program and test the voting equipment. They do all the electronic voter registers. They will recruit, train, supervise, and compensate all of the poll workers. They do all the tabulation. They do all the voter history database. They do the audits and the recounts. They operate the county-wide voter centers. And then, of course, they handle our ballot drop boxes. We have one out in our drive-through area, but they are the ones who would be collecting the ballots, provide the security for those ballots as they are going to and from our ballot drop box to the counting place at the city or at the county. And then, of course, the security camera footage, which is kind of a new item, they will also handle that as well.
Do we have an ability to view that footage if we wanted to?
I believe that we would.
We do have a representative here from the county, Roseanne.
Yes.
If you want, we could have her come up and you could ask them those questions. Is that, Roseanne, would you mind coming up, or if there's another person you'd like to have come up and introduce themselves?
So I'm Aaron Davidson. I'm the new county clerk as of January. And this is my great elections assistant, or actually election coordinator, Roseanne.
I have a quick question. Can I ask? Yeah, okay.
If you can view the footage. Is the green light happen to be on, Roseanne?
I don't hear.
Push it.
There you go.
There we go. I would have to go back and review that because it is ours, and so as the council, I would have to go back and review that to see if you just have the right to view it, or if we would have to do that under grandma. I don't want to make a promise.
Council members, I do have to remind you too that in the process of installing cameras, we actually have our camera box double covered because we have our own camera. And so although they have a different view of the ballot drop box, we do have our own camera, so you are certainly welcome anytime to come and we can show you the video footage from what we have from our camera.
But if they wanted the county, what you've mentioned is a resident could fill out a grandma request to be able to receive that footage.
You know what, as I think about it, we actually, in the last election, so we have some new cameras on the drop boxes, and so we're still in somewhat of a learning curve. We're actually going to swap them out again for the third time. Hopefully the third time's a charm. So we actually, in the general election last year, took that footage and we posted it every day for the previous day on our website. Technically, it's still out there, but don't tell anybody.
You just told everyone in public.
I know.
And there is some new legislation that just passed, so we have to go through all that to find out what we can and cannot do with that video. If it were our choice, we'd like to live stream it. But we have to look through the legislations and see what
Any
that
other follow-up
allows
questions
us.
on the footage before we go to Scott's question?
Wait, I have one more comment I need to make on footage. And if you have a double coverage on that, it's right next to your book drop. You need to be extremely cautious on that because library patrons are covered totally different. So you can't be capturing any license plate numbers, nothing that would capture a book being dropped in a drop box if you're capturing ballot stuff.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay, Scott, your question.
So my question is, if we have more than 6 applicants, we'll go to a primary, so we're going to be paying $57,000. There's a lot of citizens in Highland that would prefer voting in person. And I understand, I actually voted by mail just for convenience the last time, but I understand there were massive lines down in American Fork because people wanted to vote in person. I guess the question I have is, why do we need to cough up another $2,500 to have the ability for people to vote in person up here?
So we need to differentiate between a midterm general election and a municipal election.
Right.
So if we jump back to 2021, which would be more comparable, and we look at the numbers, in a primary election, you did have a polling place here because American Fork didn't have a primary election, so we did put it here. So you served the voters of Highland, Alpine, and Cedar Hills that did have a primary. You had less than 200 people from those 3 cities that voted in person on election day. And we would do that same thing again. If American Fork didn't have
A primary.
your polling place would be here.
But if they do have a primary, it would be down in American Fork.
Well,
Can we request that it be
Okay,
here?
she's going to say, well, tell us about your well.
So I did talk to Stephanie about that, and there is a cost, and that cost is shared among all the cities. So it's not really fair to the other cities for me to throw an additional vote center in Highland. However, I am more than happy to do that on your dime.
Well, thank you for spending our money.
And for your residents, I will say it may be worth it for you guys to do that. It may be very worth it. So, but we can do that.
When would we need to make that decision?
When you send in your ILA.
So does it need to be part of this motion?
So can I make sure I understand that correctly? So if American Fork has a primary, will the polling station automatically be in American Fork? Because there's one, like North Utah County gets one polling station if there's a primary in North Utah County, correct?
Yes.
So can we not?
No.
No.
The northeast side has one, the northwest side has one.
So can we request that that one station be in Highland?
No. Because then I'm making the voters travel from like Lehigh and American Fork travel too far this direction east.
Because there
It's
are more
more
voters in Lehigh and American Fork, so it needs to be there?
But if we agree, like in this motion today, to do the $2,500,
If it was warranted, if American Fork was having a primary and we felt it was important in the primary, we would want to put in our motion that we're willing to spend an extra $2,500 to do so.
right. But if they don't have a primary, then we wouldn't have to spend
Correct,
it.
and we could,
But you're telling us, though, when American Fork, when we did have the voting station here, less than 200 people actually came to vote out of all those cities.
I think Stephanie actually has the number of just Highland residents even.
Yeah, that's correct. And
But that's municipal
according to our Canvas documents, our certified papers, from the 2021 general election, we had 39 people, Highland residents, who voted in person on that general election in 2021.
Now granted, that during 2021, that was the peak of the pandemic, and so people were reluctant to go out.
Right.
So
That's good input.
that's done. We're back to normal. So I don't know if how that would affect if more or less people would actually show up.
Yeah.
Does the 2,500 cover the primary and the final?
Per election.
Per election?
I don't think you'd need it for the primary particularly. You could do it just for the general.
If we had a polling station here for the primary, would it only be for Highland residents?
No. It
If
would
we
be,
paid the $2,500, it still would not be just for Highland residents.
I can't program equipment specifically just for one particular city.
You know, in our last work session, we also discussed that we might want to have a item on the ballot about a question about fiber. I'm just thinking, you know, I don't know if we're going to have more turnout, less turnout, if it doesn't matter, but just as we look, we need to kind of give some input or on that. Is there questions for the county specifically on the process, or do you have your?
If you're looking to put a question on, this is the year to do it, because it's not going to cost you any additional. If you wanted to add it to like a general election ballot
It's
in
hard.
a midterm, then you incur some costs associated with that. So this is definitely the year. We already have a couple cities that have declared their intent to put questions on ballots.
So what timing, if we want to put it, when do we need to declare our intent?
I believe the law says it's in 20A7, I believe. And I think it's 65 or 75 days before the general election, which,
Is it August?
yeah, it's like the third week in August or something like that is when it falls. My
Could you let
math
us know
isn't-
for sure?
Yeah, my math isn't that good in my head to do that. If it's, I know it's the third week of August, and I don't remember if it's specifically in law spells out 65 days or 75 days, so, yeah.
Councilmember Smith, I will research that and let you know when that will be.
Yes.
Do you do tours of the election center?
What's that?
Do you do tours?
Absolutely. Had
I
one
would like
today.
to come down
have
and
one
do a tour.
tomorrow. We can give you a tour anytime. It's most exciting when we're in full election mode, but we are willing to show off our process at any time. Just schedule that. Have Stephanie schedule something.
Can we bring our youth council down and have a group?
Absolutely.
Can it be during the election, so while you're having ballots come in, can they come or not?
Well, you could, I would be reluctant to have anybody that's on the ballot spend very much time in the ballot center.
Just in case we can.
Sorry, Brittany.
We can, I am not running. We can have youth
Brittany
council.
would like to help count.
Come in for a quick tour anytime. I mean, and I shouldn't say quick because our ballot center tours never end up very quick. I mean, it's an hour. And we always welcome people to come in. It becomes an issue if you're sitting there for long periods of time as a candidate because people
No,
ask
makes
questions.
absolute sense. I think it's a smart idea.
Okay. Any other questions of our county representatives? We really appreciate you coming. Is there?
I do want to commend you for making a definite decision not to do ranked choice voting. Yes, so thank you.
I talked to Stephanie at great length about that, and I said, I can promise you, our clerk will not hold you to that. You will not be forced to do ranked choice voting.
Definitely.
And then I went in and apologized. I go, Aaron, I made a promise on your behalf.
We appreciate both of you being here tonight, so thank you.
You bet.
Council, since this does deal with our election, I would like, if there's anyone here at the public that would like to make a comment towards the elections or have things, you're welcome to come up at this time.
I'm Deborah Mon, still. And I just was going to say, I'm a poll worker. I've been for over 20-something years. And I've worked in the ballot center. And I am so proud of the way we do our voting here. I mean, our checking things out and making sure signatures are right and all that other kind of stuff, you know, with all that's been going on lately. At least in Provo at the center, I mean, they double, triple, they check everything. It's like, it is worth going down and watching. It's way cool. The problem with coming down while we're doing all this is we've got to be really careful that people don't see, you know, because we don't even see the signatures. The envelopes are like split. You can't see signatures. You take the thing out, put it, and so we've got to be careful of that kind of stuff. So they're kind of leery about, I mean, it's kind of come, stand at the door, look around, that, you know, that's all cool, but you can only get so close to different things, and that's just for security, you know. But they're really, it's a fun job also, but they do a really, really good job. I'm very proud of it. And the last couple of years with all this nonsense going on, I just kept saying, I'm so glad I'm in Utah. I'm so glad I'm here with voting because it's very secure. It's done right. Kudos. That's all. Just wanted to add that.
Anyone else would like to come address the council concerning this resolution? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and we'll bring it back to the council.
I'd like to make a motion.
Can I make a question first?
Yeah.
So if we definitely are interested in spending the $2,500, do we, so that we can have a polling place here, at least in the final election, do we have to make that part of the motion right now, Rob?
Rob is shaking his head yes, so that would be a
Yes.
recommended part of the motion.
That way we can include it with the ILA as we get it signed and sent back to the county.
Are we still ready for a motion?
Ready for another motion, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Before Kim makes her motion, I would just like to say, like, I support having the county do the election for us, but only because we have to, because I feel like the state has basically passed down a mandate that we're unable to accomplish ourselves with mail-in ballots and signature checking and things. So I don't like that we're in this position, but I feel like this is what we have to do because of state rules, and so that's what we have to do, but I still feel like it's an unfunded mandate, and I don't like it.
So Brittany, just maybe kind of help us with this motion a little bit. Would you favor, Scott, you've mentioned you'd favor putting $2,500 in for the general election to have a voting ballot here for people to be able to come in person. What's the other council, just as we're doing that motion, unless, and I'm not saying you have to include it in the motion, but just to kind of get a sense on that extra $2,500 expense.
I also favor putting that expense in because I think elections are the most important thing we do.
I agree with that. I think, if we find out that only 2 come in person, then we might not want to do it the next time. But I think we want to make voting as accessible in as many ways as possible to our residents. And if there's 39, 50 people that they don't feel comfortable with the mail-in ballots, let's provide a way for them to vote.
I agree.
Kim,
So Kim, are
do
you
have a
ready?
motion?
Fine, I can put that in the motion. I move that City Council adopt the resolution and direct the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement with Utah County to assist with the administration of the 2023 municipal election, and also approve a voting center for the general election for $2,500.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Kim, second by Scott. Any other discussion? Okay, Kim,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Is Tim online?
So his phone call got dropped. He can hear us, but I don't know why we're not able to hear him. So we're going to call him back, and maybe it'll work this time?
You gonna call right now?
Yeah, so I apologize. It is kind of awkward and
We're in the middle.
loud.
Let's go ahead and call him so he can be part of the vote.
I don't think he's heard the whole discussion. He's on YouTube right now, so he picked up part of the discussion, but not the entire discussion.
If we get him online, we can see if he feels comfortable, if he has enough information to vote. It's not going to change the outcome.
Stephanie, does she hit the call button first or the numbers first?
Numbers first.
Right in the middle.
right number that you said?
It's
Like
8:05.
order a pizza or something.
Tim, can you hear us now?
Hello? Okay, Tim, this is Mayor Osler. Have you been able to listen to the last discussion, and are you prepared to vote on item number 7, which is the resolution of the ILA agreement with Utah County for the 2023 election?
I heard the entire discussion and I vote yes.
Okay,
So-
that passes 5-0.
Has Kim voted?
Yeah. Yeah, it passed 5-0. She was the first. She was the first one to vote.
Okay. We believe it. We wondered.
She made the motion, so.
Yeah, she made the motion, and she
Well,
was
I
the
know
first
she-
one to vote. Okay, we'll now move on to, welcome back, Tim, glad to have you here. We'll now move on to item number 8, which is an action. It's a contract with Rhino Pumps for well number 4 and pump and motor, and that's Andy.
Yes, Mayor and Council, the next 2 items are actually kind of related, so we're going to cover everything together on these, and then we'll talk on the individual motions. So the council previously, you'll recall, last year, about a year ago, we finished up drilling the new well. The new well, number 4, is 1,200 feet deep. We also were fortunate enough to receive the $1 million grant from the state that helped us with this program to improve our culinary system, part of which is drilling this well, and also is adding chlorination to the other chlorination facilities to allow us to chlorinate to the other wells that don't have that, to add some pressure reducing valves to the south end of the city to help temper the pressure there, and then to fix our problem at well number 5 with the cascading water that gives us the bubbles in the water. So this is the first big project. Just as a reminder, well 4 is located on 11200 North, and just for a general landscape, kind of location, northeast of the Country Corner. There, it's shown specifically on the project. It is within a neighborhood on 11200 North, right there at the top of 50 and 100 West. We go to the next one. So what this will entail is this is a 2-phase award tonight. Number 1, we're proposing to award the pumps and the motor directly to our supplier. And then our contractor has bid the project that he's going to build the rest of the project to work with these pumps that we'll award to our supplier. So this award is a couple $100,000, and then the well construction is $1.4 million. So together it's $1.6 million. So our program to the state that we put together was a $2.5 million program, $1.5 million paid by the city, and $1 million paid by the state. And what this will include, as we look at our specific site plan here, it will include constructing a new well house on the site and all of the apparatus that goes with it, which is quite extensive in the well, and the electrical and drainage, and we will be piping the ditch along the frontage, and we will be adding a sidewalk to the frontage and finishing the front of this parcel so that it meets our current city code. We are going to build the sidewalk adjacent to the curb so that we are able to maintain and preserve the existing trees that are along the frontage to keep the look for the neighborhood. So with that, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, that's on the next one. So, but on the next one, there is a fence issue, and so I don't know where to cover it. So maybe we'll cover it here. And this motion is to consider the award of the pumps, as I said, the pumps and the motor for the well. So maybe we'll deal with this motion first, and then on the next motion, there's some fencing options that we'll talk about there.
So you'd like a motion now?
If you're ready for a motion, this would be the time for the motion for the pumps and well.
Any questions on the Rhino pump for the $211,443?
I'll make the motion if there's no question. So I move that the Highland City Council approve a contract with Rhino Pumps for the improvements associated with well number 4 in an amount up to $211,443, and authorize the city administrator to sign the contract documents.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Scott, second by Kim. Okay, we will go ahead and we'll start with you with Sarah.
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Tim Ball. Vote. Okay, that passes 5-0. Okay, we'll now move on to item number 9, which is the same, it's discussion of the same thing, well number 4, construction contract.
Yes, so same conditions. Okay, with the site plan, the one thing that we did bid as an alternate, we bid a few alternates, but the one that we will bring to the council for your consideration is the fencing. So this is different, although it does have existing chain link fence around it now. So the parcel is surrounded by chain link fence now. And when I say different in that regard, it's the same as with the consideration that we had when we looked at our well 2, when we're going to fence well 2, and we redid the fences so we could hold in all of the pressurized irrigation meters securely. That location is kind of off away from everything else and nobody sees it. Most people don't even know it's there. This is within a neighborhood, and so as you know, I believe, if I say all, I believe I'm being truthful in that. I can't think of any that are different, but if you can, please point them out to me. But our current city public works facilities around the city all have chain link fence around them. As you know, the council did not approve chain link fence as part of the fencing code when we recently looked at that, and so we bid different options. The base bid and the award of $1.4 million is for the chain link fence. We also bid a wrought iron appearance fence, which would be kind of the tube steel, the vertical slats, if you will, very similar to the fence that's around the American Fork pressurized irrigation pond, except for this one we just had them going straight up rather than bowing out like that one does. That adds $47,000 to the cost to put that on all four sides of the lot. We also bid to do the fence in precast concrete. And so the additional cost to the project, if we did precast concrete on all four sides, would be $149,000. There's obviously, lower amounts, it's 149, $250 or whatever it is, but substantively, that's the addition. What we are facing as a city is, as with everything, it seems like right now, as hard as we try, we can't get it right on the nail when we do our budgetary estimates, and so we actually, in the rate studies for these projects, we had $1.8 million allocated for these three projects, so, or four projects. So we have the $1 million from the state, so we have $2.8 million total to build these with. The well is, without the contingency, is about $1.6 million. We always ask you to approve a contingency for us because there is unforeseens with our construction. That contingency is eating into that extra $300,000, if you will, and we haven't yet bid those other three projects, the chlorination, the PRVs, or well 5. So we may yet have additional expenses that we don't know about. And because of that, we are recommending that we go with the chain link fence. But we do recognize that the council has given at least some input on chain link fencing. This would be the black vinyl coated, so it's not the plain old galvanized stuff, but it is chain link fence, but it does keep us closer on budget. So with that, ask for your input.
I'm fine with the black vinyl coated chain link.
I am as well.
I don't have any problem with the chain link fence, but I think it's a little ironic that we had two other motions tonight that said the citizens have to follow the code exactly. And then when it's the city's turn, we can ignore the code. And we also do that with our storage bins. So I think we can't have it both ways. I think we need to be consistent. So if we're going to allow the city to have chain link fences, and I understand the cost, Andy, and I'm not opposed to it, but then I think we should allow everyone to have chain link fences. I think we got to be careful to tell everybody, you can't have a chain link fence, but we're going to put one up for the city. So I just think it's not good.
If the council does want to amend the, the code to allow that at city facilities, we'd be happy to bring that back to you. Honestly, it was kind of an oversight in our last go around on the fence. There always seems to be something with our fence code.
But I think we need to be consistent.
Now, I thought, let me ask you this, when we did the fencing, wasn't government entities?
I thought we had it not in there.
I thought we
No,
had
we
that in
did
there.
the chain link fence as a addendum and a
We
kind of
did,
ad
but
hoc. We didn't make stipulations.
I do want to clarify, as far as residents and fencing that they can put up, for sports courts, we do allow the vinyl coated chain link up to 12 feet tall, and so it's not totally out there, but again, for residents, it is specific to sports courts, and obviously, you don't typically have a well and a well house on a residential lot, so it's not perfectly comparable, but just kind of showing that you will see that kind of fence
I don't think
on
it's-
residential
yeah.
lots, but yeah, we don't have a specific call out allowing public facilities to have these types
I
of
don't think it's
fences.
comparable at all, because when you talk about a resident house and the type of fence that you want the look to have surrounding residence house versus a pump house and a sports court, there are fencing that go with that type of structure.
Well, but you know, this is kind of a branch off some of the discussions we've had tonight, where we've been very insistent that people follow the codes. And so I think the city needs to follow the codes regardless. Now, I'm not opposed to the chain link fence with the vinyl, but if we're going to allow the city to do that, it needs to be in the code. But I think we have to be careful with this, having a double standard, one for the city, one for the citizens, because if I was a citizen and I said, oh, I can't put a chain link up with vinyl in it, but the city can, why is that fair? I just think we need to kind of have a discussion about that and make things
It is, let me
consistent.
ask you, so would this be zoned R140 or is it public facility? And so the code would be underneath public facility. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, but I think, Scott, you bring up, we got to be careful, you know, hey, what's the difference? But I think it's, hey, what is that use is, you know, it's hard because I can go and hold it. It is, this does sit in between two homes. You know, some of our well houses kind of sit a little bit on their own. This was there before they built there. You know, that's.
Right, and I understand those arguments, but I just think we've got to be careful not to have a double standard.
I just want to clarify, as far as, we do have a public utility zone. We only have one parcel in the city that's actually zoned that. It's along Alpine Highway. It's on the very southern end. It's just across from where that pressurized irrigation pond is, the AF one. And then, but obviously, we have wells and public utilities and facilities all throughout the city. Most of them are in our residential districts.
Rest of the council, what's your feeling?
So I'm good with going with the black vinyl coated, but I agree with Scott in that I think we should bring it back and make a rule specific to city structures, utilities, and things.
So the recommendation is that staff would come back and we'd look at this specific code dealing with the fencing code around city facilities. And I've heard that from two council members, and that usually triggers to have it
I'm
come
fine
back.
with that.
So, okay. On this specific item, do you feel good enough to move forward with it?
So if we make this motion, in the motion is the vinyl chain link fence?
The motion as presented to you is, the amount is the amount for the chain link fence plus the 10% contingency that we standardly do. I did forget to bring up one thing I wanted to raise to you. We've already received the $1 million from the state, and so anything that we pay in this fiscal year, we already have the money for. We'll pay our portion in fiscal year 24, because this will be like a year-long project. But the current budget year didn't know what to contemplate as far as how much of this project we'd get done. So at the end of the budget year, there will be a final budget adjustment that says we're going to spend this much money on it, but we don't anticipate that by the time we get to that point, we'll have even spent the $1 million. So just want to have that acknowledged, that there will be a budget adjustment goes with this, but it won't really hit us this year because we're kind of working off the state money first.
Can you remind me again, the $1 million, what grant was that we received?
Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity.
Was that the local match grant?
It's local match grant, yeah. The local government's grant or local match grant, I don't know what it's called.
So do we need to spend that proportionally, though, the local match with the other sources?
I don't know, he didn't tell me that yet.
Maybe look at that up in the grant agreement to
okay.
make sure you have to, I
Okay,
just know on
yeah.
other local match agreements, you do have to spend the
Okay.
other sources proportionally to your
commensurately.
local match, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I apologize if I was speaking out of turn there. I just assumed as long as we spent, and when we were collectively done, our half and their half, it didn't matter, but you might be right. I apologize.
Council, this is the $1 million. If you remember, we hired a consultant.
Yes.
David Stewart. This is the grant that when we were discussing that, saying, hey, we authorize you, and we paid a consultant to help us go after this grant.
And Andy's very helpful. Can I ask a kind of tangential question? So we always talk about these contingency, I never can say that word, 10%. How often are the people that we provide those for using that 10%? Is
Well,
it
they
every
don't-
time, or?
They don't get to use it automatically. They have to prove to us that, the extra expense is justified. But and maybe this means that I'm a really bad project manager, but I'll answer your question in that I've never yet, in my entire career, constructed a project that was designed perfectly and thought of every condition. So to one extent or another, we always use some of the contingency. Because despite your best efforts in your planning, you always missed or overlooked something.
Okay. And I understand that. Someday could we, I know we don't have to immediately, but maybe get kind of an idea how often this is happening? If it happens with every project, how much
Well,
it is?
And I guess what I'm saying is, to one extent
Yeah.
or another, we're using a contingency on every project.
Every project.
Maybe what Scott's asking, though, are we using the full 10%?
10% on every one
Or
of
is
these.
it a 2% average that we use as a contingency?
So
Yeah, that's my
I'll just give
question.
you an anecdotal answer, and that is that on an average, we use about between 4% and 6% on an average project. Over the course of my career, that isn't specific to just Highland City projects. It's what I use.
But usually not the full 10%.
Generally not the full 10%.
So I guess my question is, again, if we make this motion the way it's written here, does that include the black vinyl chain link fence?
This is the black vinyl chain link fence motion. Though your suggested motion is the black vinyl chain link fence
Okay.
motion.
I'll make that motion. I move this Highland City Council approve the construction contract with Van Con Incorporated for the construction of well number 4 and associated site improvements in an amount of $1,543,535 and authorize the city administrator to sign the contract documents.
I'll second.
That was you, Brittany?
Yes.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Brittany. We will go ahead and start the voting. We're going to start the voting with Tim. Tim Ball, would you mind voting first?
Yes, I don't mind, and the vote is yes.
Okay. Sarah Peterson.
Yes.
Brittany Bills.
Yes.
Scott Smith.
Yes.
Kim Rodella.
Yes.
That passes 5-0. We'll now move on to item number 10, which is our contract, construction contract for the roadway crack sealing.
That's me again, Mayor and Council. So as part of our road work, you'll recall, we didn't roll out a major roadwork project this spring because we were a little bit tentative on what was going to happen with the Pleasant Grove court case. But since that court case has kind of given us some clarity, you'll start seeing a few road items, a couple of which you've got tonight. You may not see a lot of the others till summertime, but we are working in that direction, so to speak. This would be the first step in that process, and the crack seal is to go down the roads and put the lines of bituminous material that you see all over that seals them up so the moisture can't get in there and preserves the life. So this is throughout the city. You were provided a map, and it's lots of locations, but it is probably the cheapest. We get the best bang for our buck out of crack sealing as far as preserving the roads. So if you happen to answer any questions you have about it.
And you said this was already in the budget?
This is within the budget that we have.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the city council approve the contract with Kilgore Contracting in the amount up to $99,600 for the 2023 crack seal treatment project and authorize the city administrator to execute the contract documents.
Can I ask a quick question before we vote? So have you been pleased with their work? I mean, they've done
Kilgore?
other projects.
Kilgore does a nice job. Yeah, we're good with Kilgore.
So they're high quality.
Yeah, they're one of your larger asphalt contractors in the state these days.
I have a motion by Kim. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Scott. We're going to start with Sarah Peterson.
Yes.
Brittany Bills.
Yes.
Scott Smith.
Yes.
Kim Rodella.
Yes.
Tim Ball.
Yes.
That passes 5-0. On to item number 11, which is a contract with Geneva Rock for 6800 West roadway paving.
So, Mayor and Council, sorry, you're just hearing from me a bunch in a row here. As I'd indicated, now that we know that we're going to have a funding source, we're looking at additional roadway improvements. And can we go to the next slide? So what we're looking at is the 6800 West project, as you're aware, has rebuilt and widened and repaved the road south of 9600 North. And it's a beautiful roadway. And that beautiful roadway has brought to focus the not so beautiful roadway that's north of it for 600 feet or so. And so what we're suggesting is that the contractor, weather permitting, is getting ready to repave the intersection at 9600 North and 6800 West. With that, we would like to add to their work to repave that 600 feet. It will not be widening it in front of the Cook's homes there, but it will improve the driving surface, and so will entail removing completely and replacing the pavement for this 600 feet. We think it's a good opportunity to capture efforts that are already underway, and but this would be an expense that's entirely borne by the city because it's outside the limits of the project. But we think it's a good chance to get it done while we're doing the rest of the work.
And how does that fit into the budget?
Yes, this will work within the budget that we have left this year. We've programmed and projected the things that are coming, and just on that, one of the, and this works within the budget, but this is just general commentary. One of the hardest things we have when it comes to pavement project specific, although all our construction projects, is that our budget year happens right in the middle of our construction year. And so when we look at budgets and completion dates and everything, we're doing this and we're saying, okay, I think they're going to have that much of it done by the time we hit July 1st. It's a little bit of an art form, and that's an ever-moving needle. So hopefully as we look at a few of these future projects, you can handle that we sometimes hit it right and sometimes we hit it wrong on the side of that. So, can we go forward?
Andy, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Let's go back and look at that map.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've driven through there many times. So the road is wider in front of the church, and then as you go farther north, it jogs back in. Is there any reason why eventually that road's going to be widened the whole way, or is it always going to be like this?
Oh, no, I think eventually it'll be widened. I think that there's a future day. You've got the future development parcel north of here where that fire happened, you know, that'll widen it. And then I think there's a future day where the city's, going to come and look to widen that and have that cross-section consistent. And one answer would be, you know what, we're content to patch it up until that day. We looked at it on the staff side and said, we're not sure when that day is going to come. And this little stretch of road has gotten much worse this winter with the harsh winter. And so we're saying, yeah, it could be that we'll have a patched, widened pavement, but I'm not sure when that day is going to come, and probably better to fix this while we have the opportunity.
So is this a prototype for 4800 West going north of SR 92, where it starts out wide and then gets real narrow again? Is this practice? Or?
Fair enough.
That wasn't a serious question, I'm sorry.
Okay, is there any other questions? If not, we'd probably be ready for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah, I didn't hear you.
I move that the City Council approve the contract with Geneva Rock Products Incorporated for paving on 6800 West in an amount up to $119,508, and authorize the city administrator to sign the contract documents.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Sarah, second by Scott. We'll start with Brittany Bills.
Yes.
Scott Smith.
Yes.
Kim Radella.
Yes.
Tim Ball.
Yes.
And Sarah Peterson.
Yes.
Passes 5-0. We're now on item number 12, which is an action item, authorization of the use of funds for Mountain Ridge Park. This will be our city administrator, Aaron Wells.
And Mayor and Council, we're going to do the same kind of a thing that Andy just did, where we're going to combine a couple of items before asking for your votes, just because we thought that it would make more sense for you. So we're going to talk about kind of the revenue related to Mountain Ridge Park first, and then talk about some of the final expenses. And then we'll ask for vote on those two different items, and then move on to a couple different items in relation to Mountain Ridge. Okay, so looking at revenue, I know this is going to be hard to see on your screens, but it was in the packet. These are all the different sources of revenue that council has previously authorized for to put towards Mountain Ridge Park. So when you look at that total, it's about $7.7 million. And as a note, that does not include the $500,000 we are expecting to come in any day from the playground donor to the foundation.
And have you announced that? Because I was told yesterday that the check was in the mail.
In the mail, has not yet arrived, but we are anxiously watching for it to
I would
arrive.
think that would be kind of a registered letter.
Right, something a little important in that
Right.
amount of money, so.
Right.
Also, another goal essentially council set for us is you said, we're okay to use fund balance to get to 27.5%. That was kind of the goal. And when you, what that 27.5%, it's 27.5% of the current year's revenue we have in our general fund balance. So,
The reserve.
yeah, our reserve, thank you. So when you, as you remember, a couple council meetings ago, we closed out our year. So our fiscal year 2022 audited fund balance came in at almost $3.5 million. Now, with what we have in the budget this year, if you remember, when the budget was approved, there was additional fund balance intended there. So if you look at our current budget, we're projecting almost $4.2 million at the end of this fiscal year. And again, that is just a projection. If everything came in exactly at budget, that's where we would end up. A lot of that has to do with essentially how we're changing, how we're budgeting and tracking and allocating expenses with building related funds. So as a reminder, state law requires us to have between 5 and 35%. And the city has hovered in the past somewhere between 25 and 35 in the more recent history of the city. Again, council's goal was 27.5%. So that 27.5%, what that actually means for your fund balance varies year to year because it all matters what your revenue was this year. This year, our revenue is higher than normal because of ARPA, right? So we're getting $2 million in this year because of ARPA funds. So this year, to get 27.5%, you're looking at $3.9 million. But next year, you're looking, as an estimate, at $3.3 million. So depending on how comfortable council is, where you want to land percentage-wise, knowing that every year the percent is different, essentially, if you used $800,000 of fund balance right now, it would get us down to a fund balance of $3.3 million, which again is roughly going to be 27.5% on a normal revenue year for us. And that would bring our total revenue available for Mountain Ridge Park to $8.5 million.
Erin, that $1 million grant doesn't count in that, correct?
$1 million water grant?
Yes.
Correct, because
The water
it's
fund.
just for general fund revenue.
Yeah, the water grant went into our water, enterprise fund. It doesn't go into my understanding, it did not go in the general fund.
Correct.
So again, that's not counting the $500,000 donation. That's
It is
on
not. So the $8.5 million does not count the $500,000, just because we don't quite have it. At the time of the writing, we weren't sure when the writing of this report, we weren't sure when the check was coming, so.
Aaron, there was a discussion, and I don't know when you wanted to share it, about how some of the bond payments, was that going to be discussed tonight or another time? How
We
bond-
can discuss the bond payments. If you don't mind, Mayor, I'd like to focus on kind of where we're at, current revenue, current expenses, and then we'll look towards using additional revenues.
Okay.
Any other questions about this relation for fund balance and revenue use? Then I'm going to let Andy talk about the expenses that were in your staff report.
When we talked to Mountain Ridge about 6 months ago, and the council made the major decisions to add the additional gap areas and proceed forward, council gave the staff direction that you wanted us to work through the change order, which would include gap number 4. And as a reminder, gap number 4 is that area that kind of was south of the playground area. We have a map that I'm going to get to in just a minute, but before then, we'll talk about the timeline we're on. Right now with the contractor, this winter has been virtually impossible for them to work there. They've either had frozen ground or muddy ground, and they've had a lot of that and very few work days. And so We've agreed to give them a little bit of extra time, but they've agreed to have what we considered the core facilities. While we would love to have the playground, and we consider it core, we're just looking at, what would be most used during Highland Fling, and so they've agreed to have the parking lot done and kind of the pickleball corner and the restroom all available for use for Highland Fling, which that week starts July 31st. And then they've agreed to have the balance of everything done by September 21st, 2023, so that, the playground and everything else can be used this fall. So looking at what we're looking at, we held off just a little bit contracting that landscaping scope, and it took a while to work out the city sign for the donors and the Welcome to Mountain Ridge sign, but we held off because we didn't want to get overextended. At this point, if the council's comfortable going forward with what Aaron has suggested from finance side, we would be able to afford these, and this is all without the donation again. So the sign is $81,000, and the landscaping ribbon is $147,000, and I've got a picture coming of both of those. So the sign, you've recently seen this rendering. This is where we've landed with the architect and the supplier, in that it's a nice looking sign, and it works within the budgeting that we have for the park. So from each side, you would see Mountain Ridge. You'll notice the letters are outlined in stainless steel, and then those will be set off the backer just a little bit so that we can put some lights at the bottom of it and kind of have the lights shine up, and at night you'd see the shadowing of Mountain Ridge. And then the honed faces, if you will, that you walk between is where the donors would be acknowledged on the flat face of the rocks. So this is what the sign would look like. And then the landscaping area that we're proposing to add is the landscaping area shown in yellow. That was the direction the council gave us in August, but like I said, we wanted to wait to put this under contract till we knew that we were on solid ground financially. So that's what we're bringing forward for your consideration. But as Aaron indicated, these kind of go hand in hand, in that our being on sound ground financially would assume that you are going to approve the $800,000 in fund balance transfer, and then this $8.5 million. These change orders don't take us to that $8.5 million. That right now our contracted work is about $7.6 million. This is $250,000 of additional work, roughly. I'm rounding off 230 actually. My brain's catching up. But then by the time we put a little contingency in there for the unforeseen, with a 10% contingency, that takes our expenses up to $8.65 million. With the $800,000, it would take our revenue up to $8.5 million. But we do know that the check is in the mail, and that is a full 10% contingency yet on the entire work. So we feel comfortable between the combination of those, we wouldn't be overextending ourselves if we went ahead and approved these change orders. And then that, I think, would take us through the point that while there's certainly discussion to come on what's next, and we're going to have that discussion here in a minute, we'd probably be at the point where, okay, let's get in, let's finish that, and then let's figure out the next steps, because that way we'd be kind of matching what we can do financially right now.
Andy, this is kind of another tangential question, but the ball diamond, the baseball diamond, is being donated. What's the timeline on that?
We do not have a current timeline. We have spoken, maybe Councilmember
Chad just called me up today, and he said that Dustin Larson, he just got plans back from him, and Dustin said he has time to do it this summer, so that he's working with him.
I spoke with Chad about a month ago, and he said he was going to talk with Dustin, but I hadn't heard the follow-up, so this is perfect.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had that conversation. This is great. That's really good news.
He did have questions about turf, but I'll ask you about that after.
Okay.
So, and I just want to add one other thing. In the foundation, there's another $15,000 that can be used towards the park.
Great.
Okay, Adobe donated $7,500. And then there's been another 7,500 that's kind of sitting from a previous donation from Patterson.
Well, that's
So that's
wonderful.
another 15,000, and hopefully we're going to go out and do a little more fundraising here too.
Well, and I think as the park starts to look like a park, so to speak, it'll begin to sell itself as well for donations, I would.
And we want a flag pole with a nice size flag on it. We talked about that. We thought people could donate towards that.
Yes, we can add that. It's not in our current plan.
I know.
But we can add
but
it.
I think it
and
needs to be
that's-
added because it's a good source.
Yeah, yeah, and it would look beautiful.
It'd look beautiful.
It would look
So if
beautiful.
somebody did want to donate for the flagpole, could they fly a flag with their face on it?
We would probably prefer to have the American flag and the city flag.
Yeah, we could have the new state flag.
And the new state
Oh, it is a
flag,
good one.
Yeah,
if it gets
and
passed.
the
on a
United States
referendum.
flag.
Questions on Mountain Ridge? Now, this does not include the soccer fields or the baseball diamond.
This does not
Or
include
the- or
soccer
the
fields,
trail
the baseball
around,
diamond,
or-
let's go, can you take me back?
Give me 1 second, since the voting slides don't work anyway.
Okay.
So what it does include, right, is most of the green, not everything, but does not include soccer field, baseball field, because baseball field is being donated at this point, or any blue.
One other thing it doesn't include, we've contemplated where that kind of little rectangle is over in the green area on the left. That would be a ninja course, kind of timed obstacle course. We have not yet contracted that improvement yet either. So that's why it includes most of the green. Our construction access to the soccer field area and baseball area will be on that far west line and on the far south line. And so we wouldn't want to contract any of the Ninja Warrior course without, having the construction done south of there.
So I think this is the elephant in the room, though. I mean, this park has got progressively more expensive. And so the baseball field is a donation. And we're probably going to get some more donations as we start developing things, which I hope we do. But, I mean, the city's going to be responsible for developing the soccer fields and the trail around the park. I mean, does anybody have an estimate right now what that will cost us? Oh, she
We'll
does.
just jump around. I'm sorry, it's a hard one to try and separate out all this discussion.
Right.
So what we do not have contracted right now, actually throw the flag in there too, because I'm sorry, we talked about that and I neglected to pass that on to Andy, and I apologize, Mayor and Scott. So what we do not have contracted, gap 4, like the remainder of the grass and the ninja courts. Gap 5, the trail in south of the fields, and then the soccer field itself. Those are not in our current budget. Those all add up to 1.35, almost 1.4 if you were rounding up $1 million. Couple asterisks with this. These bids are older, around 6 months or so ago is when we last got bids on these items. Also, there's a lingering, we might have to add noise barrier to the pickleball courts. We'll kind of see how it goes. That would be about $55,000. And again, this does assume that the baseball field construction is donated, and I'm thrilled to hear that sounds like that's still a go. So there's still a remainder, $1.3 million out there that we
Need to raise.
need to raise.
So of the 1,352, you have 500,000 coming in, right? Or is,
Yes, but remember, so we're about 100,000 short technically right now, so then you've got about 400 out there. There's some additional revenue sources we've talked about that we don't have final numbers for, or some of them we do, right? So the blue trail, right, the south, or excuse me, what would that be, west? No, south. South part of the trail, right, we've gotten a water conservation grant, thank you Kelly for that, but so that would be that second phase of that. Playground donation we've talked about. Mayor, this is to your question earlier. We're currently working with Lewis & Young to update our parks impact fee study to contemplate Mountain Ridge as a part of that. And so that'll depend on the analysis and frankly where we're at with building permits. We projected $1 million, well, more than that. Our projections are lagging in what we expected for park impact fee revenue this year. And so we'll need to take a look at that study that Lewis and Young's working on and look at where we're at in the park's impact fee to make sure we have enough money to pay the bond payments before we would dedicate any additional funds to Mountain Ridge. There's also a little bit of money sitting out there. We're waiting for some development to finish up for our town center. And then, again, we've had conversations with others about donations for potential things that we just haven't fully circled up on yet. So a lot of lingering potentials out there to help us get to that 1.3 million, but nothing solid enough yet that we feel comfortable contracting for those.
So at one time, when in the discussions with SURF, are we still allowing them to use the Lone Peak soccer fields? And they were going to make a donation.
They were.
We had that down as a discussion item, communication 14A.
Okay.
And Brian is so excited to be here to talk about that.
So,
okay.
Why don't we finish here, and then we'll be coming back. So we will be discussing SURF here in a little bit.
So if council is amenable, we've got two motions, one on the revenue side, one on the expense side, and then we'll jump to SURF. Unless, I'm happy to answer any additional questions, but.
I'll make a motion. Are we ready? Yeah. So basically, we're taking some of the reserve, basically,
Yes.
using it on our park. So we still have a substantial reserve.
Yeah, so this would
Okay.
take us as an estimate at the end of fiscal
This-
year 23 to
Right.
3.3.
For years, our reserve sat at 25%, which was state law. Then they upped it, then we upped it, but then we can come back down a little bit. So I move that the Highland City Council authorize the use of $800,000 of general fund balance. It's general fund balance, but towards the construction of Mountain Ridge Park.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion by Scott, second by Brittany. We'll go ahead and we'll begin with the vote with Scott.
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Tim Ball? Tim, are you present with us?
Yes, the vote is yes.
Okay. Sarah Peterson?
Yes.
And Brittany Bills?
Yes.
That passes 5-0. Okay, I think we have another motion.
So I think for the public, it's what we need to let people know is we're building this park without having to bond, without having to borrow money. We're trying to find every source of funding we can without going into debt over it, so.
That's why we're trying to do some fundraising.
That's right.
I'll make a motion. I move that the city council approve the change order with Stratton and Bratt Landscapes LLC and authorize a contract up to $251,149 for Mountain Ridge Park, change order number 5, and authorize the city administrator to execute the contract documents.
I'll second.
Okay, just FYI, that includes all the monument signs, the new rock stuff. Okay, Sarah was the motion and Kim was the second. We'll now go to vote. We'll go ahead and we'll start with Kim.
Yes.
Tim Ball.
Yes.
Sarah Peterson.
Yes.
Brittany Bills.
Yes.
Scott Smith.
Yes.
5-0. We now have some communication items. Now, we are at time at
10:04.
10:04. If you look at our communication items, we probably need at least a good, there's some items here, 20 to 30 minutes, if the council so desires to extend.
I'll make a motion that we extend the meeting until 10:30. That gives us 27 minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's now been extended to 10:30. Okay, go on number 14A.
We will work on being brief, Mayor and Council. So as a reminder, we haven't talked about this in a while, but kind of the proposal that we worked out with SURF came up with an idea. At first, there was an idea of having them lease Mountain Ridge fields, but where the council felt more amenable is actually doing them on a different set of fields. So do a long-term lease, a potential long-term lease contract with Surf Soccer. 10 years is their request for the Lone Peak field. So those are the ones that are north of Lone Peak High School. They would do a $200,000 upfront payment for that 10-year lease. During that whole 10 years, they would maintain the fields, and they actually intended to upgrade the quality of the fields to a field that they feel is better quality to play on. And that would give them essentially priority field access. There would be other times where we could work out some other access for other groups, but they would certainly have the priority field access during those 10 years. So one thing council asked us to look into is, okay, so who is using those fields currently? They're heavily used, especially spring and fall, a little bit during the summer, but some of the heaviest users are North Utah County Soccer, which is more of a rec type soccer league, is my understanding.
Yes.
And then Lone Peak High School themselves use it for various activities depending on the season and what's going on. And then there's a junior lacrosse club not associated with the high school that also uses it. And Cedar Hills Flag Football has in the past, but has also established some other parks that they use.
Aaron, can I ask a quick question?
Please.
Do any of these organizations pay a rental fee or pay to use these fields, or they just?
They all do pay rental fees.
Okay, even the school district?
Well, the Cedar Hills might be a caveat there because we have a different agreement with them, but the school district, is my understanding, is yes, they're paying. But what the 200,000 is nowhere. We would never collect that much money over 10 years for the rentals. You know, and I'm not saying that's the only reason to consider doing it, but we certainly do. We collect a small amount through rental fees.
So I think one of the questions of the council, so let's assume we build this new park, because would these, would some of these move over to there, or would they move to some of the other city parks? You know, there might be some other parks. And I was going to say, as we kind of say open spaces, now city space, is there going to be some parks that were used that way that now become also open for other type of reservations? That would be a decision down the road, but I'm just going, what kind of opens up?
And we have a few other parks throughout the city, but to the mayor's point, the other biggest park is Beacon Hills, and it is not used near as much, especially the lower field. It's a retention basin, so it is a bit, can be a bit wetter depending on the time of year and things like that. So that's a park that, you know, we could potentially shift people to, or you could look at potentially doing a long-term lease there. But really, Mayor, you're right. So we have a few questions for council. Two main questions. The first is, do you want to pursue this agreement, right? We haven't talked about in a little while. You wanted some more information, so we've brought at least that to you at this point. But to the mayor's point, really, if you do that, we would need to be moving those Lone Peak field users somewhere. It's not our responsibility but to do that, but they would seek to be going to a different field, right? Especially the high school ones. I'm sure that we'll get a bit of frustration, right, that they can't just walk over to the fields now that they have to drive somewhere. And then we also, so as we just went through the math there, if you remember, finishing the soccer fields was a little close to $500,000. So even with a $200,000 donation, we're probably not quite there yet to finish that out. And then do we have a timing issue, right? If we tried to get the fields done this year, play on them in the spring, do we have enough time, right, to make that happen if we don't have enough budget to finish the Mountain Ridge fields before Surf would start to use the Lone Peak fields? Essentially what it could mean is while we're building new fields at Mountain Ridge Park, you don't really get quote-unquote new fields because you're just shifting the Lone Peak users over to Mountain Ridge, and then Surf is taking over Lone Peak. Again, I mean, it is a generous offer in the $200,000, and I certainly don't want to take that lightly, but just some considerations that we had talked about last time we wanted to bring to your thoughts. So do you want us to pursue some type of an agreement here? And then we can talk about, if so, do we just look to Surf, or do we open this up more broadly and look for an RFP type of a situation?
Is there any idea about what priority use looks like right now?
For Surf or Brian?
For Surf with the 200,000.
My understanding from previous drafts of the agreement was basically they would be the only athletic type use, and then the rest would be kind of more families could rent it type of a thing, but they don't want other teams on it.
So no other teams, but if there are casual users that just show up to throw a Frisbee or things of that nature, they were okay.
So that's not really priority use, it's more exclusive use.
Correct.
Okay. Just want to understand.
Yep.
Brian, did I miss anything?
Now, one thing, Surf is also maintaining, so that also, you know, we're not having to
It
go over
cuts
there.
back some of our maintenance.
Yeah, it cuts back on some of the maintenance.
I just want to make sure that you understood that the maintenance, I mean, that's mowing the lawns, it's fertilizing, that's taking care of all of those kinds of things. So that has a lot of value as well. One of the things that they've offered is we've talked about Highland City having a potential recreational activities and things like that. They are talking about being willing to have those kinds of opportunities for Highland residents as well. So Cedar Hills has been doing some of that. That would include some soccer and other kinds of activities that we could have there on those fields as well, so that it would expand the use. But they're willing to do that as well. So when you say exclusive, the answer is yes. They want to have some control to protect their fields, and that's primarily the reason for the exclusivity. If we're talking about some of the other uses that are minor in impacting the field, then I'm sure that they would be willing to talk about what those were. But we would want to have it on the table so everybody understood what that would mean and who would be involved in those kinds of things.
Now, Brian, they're just talking 2 fields, correct?
They're talking all of the grass that's there.
Because it appears there was 2 soccer fields and like a small, I call it a U8 soccer area.
There was a little bit more, but the fact of having to mow the lawns and how do you maintain that little piece? So it's really more of maintaining all of it and having control of all of it and being able to use some of it for some of those kinds of things.
And no desire to fence it or anything, because we've talked about vandalism on the baseball
Oh,
fields.
they would love to fence it, put a chain link fence, as was
Black chain
discussed
link
earlier.
fence?
A black chain link fence.
Vinyl coated?
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, probably not vinyl coated. That would add a little too much cost, but Scott, that's for you. We'll put that fence and put your name on it.
Well, I just like to be consistent. We pass, you know.
I agree. I'm just harassing.
I know you're teasing me.
Council, it's probably time that we kind of come to,
Serious, they would be willing to put a fence around it as well.
So out of the deal, we get $200,000. They do a lot of maintenance. So my only question is where does the high school teams go? And,
So to be fair about that, they are using the fields.
Right.
I don't believe that they're paying for those fields. You can correct me.
Yeah, I don't think they are either, and they're not maintaining them either.
they do have other
They
fields.
have
at the high
huge
school.
fields over behind their school called a football field and a baseball field where they could march just fine on it. They don't want to ruin their turf.
That's right.
They would rather ruin
Our
Highland
turf.
City turf. And so, looking at it from a fairness standpoint, it's not going to be an issue for them to use their own fields if they want. And if they don't like that, they can send their people to the junior high or some other types of fields to march on.
So we're not going to get into turf wars or anything.
Well, like Aaron said, they probably won't like it and they'll probably squawk about it. But in a fairness kind of issue, they're just using those fields for free, and they have fields, and they could use them today. So.
But this is just easier as
Oh, yeah.
they've been using it.
Oh, yeah,
Especially if
and we haven't
maintain
pushed
it.
back on them. And there is some extra room on those fields that, they could march in the corners and things like that wouldn't
Well,
interfere
and
with some of the
during the
games.
school day, there's no one else used them, so they see this as space.
Yes.
And so they're just coming over during school because no one's there.
But Surf doesn't want them to march on those fields when they maintain
I was
them.
going to say, who enforces that?
I can't speak for Surf. My guess is if they're marching in patterns that would ruin the field, they absolutely would not. If it was something that didn't hurt the turf,
They'll do it in squares.
they've been really open in trying to work with the city and trying to
Sure.
find something, because they don't feel like they're using it all the time, and they would like to be able to have the consistency of multiple years.
But you said
But-
Surf would like to fence it if they could.
Well, yeah, because it would make it.
Sure.
It would make it an easier way to maintain those fields in a nicer fashion.
Hey, council,
True, I agree
that's
with
how, we need to decide, do you want to move forward with SURF? Do you want to go the process of negotiating with SURF or a formal bid? Or do you just want to leave the fields as is? And we do not want to do anything with any, not just SURF, but any organization on a donation process in that way.
I'd like to pursue an agreement with Surf. I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages.
Okay.
I have a very hard time with exclusion for a public park. That being said, I'm not a no on this, but I would want to negotiate, and I'm also very much in favor of a formal bid opportunity for all.
So one thing, Blaine is online. I don't know if you can see his messages with YouTube, but he just sent me a text. He's listening. He couldn't be here. He had to head up to Idaho tonight, and so he has been listening. He said that they currently have the Mountain Ridge Junior High, and that the soccer team that you talked about, Utah County Soccer, could go
Move over.
on that
What
field.
they're saying is they're at the junior high, they could swap, they take that Lone Peak and that frees up the
Yes.
junior high
Yes.
property,
Yes.
depending on first come, first served at the school districts.
But you were talking about being concerned about some of these, that would be an option for.
But this frees up all the Mountain Ridge soccer places for everybody.
Well, I know Nukes is on Mountain Ridge also all day Saturdays. So, I mean, he doesn't have Mountain Ridge the whole entire time.
Good input.
I'm supportive. I would like to negotiate. I don't know that $200,000 is worth 10 years. I think that's a low number for 10 years, and I don't necessarily need it to go out to formal bid on this piece, especially when we've kind of put it out there, some interest, and nobody has really come to the table except for Surf. So I'm okay honoring Surf. And they have been really good and flexible, but I do think we need to negotiate with them. I think that $200K is too low.
So he says that they're on half of the fields at Mountain Ridge Junior High.
That's good input. Okay, we got Brittany and Tim. Okay, so at this time, I have Kim that's kind of, yes, well, it's a no, but it's willing to do the negotiation, but wants more of a formal bid opportunity. Sarah, you said go into negotiation with
I'm
Surf.
a yes if we get to the right amount.
The right amount and negotiate with Surf. Scott, you mentioned you're okay with negotiating with Surf. Brittany and Tim.
I agree with Scott and Sarah. Kim, are there other organizations you think that would be interested in bidding?
Absolutely, yes.
So, Brittany, where are you? You said you were.
She's
Scott-
agreeing with me.
You said Scott and Sarah. Are you still there after your question?
Yes, I'm with, I don't remember what Scott and Sarah said. What I think is.
Scott and Sarah
It's been a
said.
minute.
I said I would like
negotiate
to
with
pursue
Surf.
the agreement.
They said negotiate with Surf, not necessarily do a formal bid. Is that where you're at?
I would say what does it hurt to have a formal bid?
Okay. Tim, are you online?
I am, I agree with Kim.
Okay, and that means, are you a no, or you're saying negotiate with Surf or go out to formal bid?
I think there are several options, and I think we should explore all of the options.
So you're saying,
I thought we'd been doing that.
okay, so you're saying doing formal bid. So Kim, your formal bid, Tim, your formal bid, Sarah, your Surf. Are you formal bid, Brittany?
Yeah, if you put it out for a formal bid, like how, I guess, what is that? Is that process like super long and super formal? Because it is, nobody else has expressed interest yet.
It doesn't have to be overly formal. It just kind of asks for them to put down in writing what your actual plan is, right? And so that'll have Surf submitting something. We would want to give some time for other organizations to look into it, but it doesn't have to be incredibly long.
So if someone else came back and said, we'll pay you $250,000.
It's possible.
Then we would go for that.
Because when Sarah said it's $200,000 is too low of a number, for me, I think, well, I don't know what's too low of a number because I've never leased out soccer fields for 10 years before. So I would be interested in seeing what anybody else has to say.
So are you now saying that you're more in favor of a formal bid opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, I think we've got our direction on that. This is not an item to vote, this is a discussion item.
On the formal bid, I think that this has been drug out for a long time.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to do the formal bid, I would say let's do it quickly with a quick turnaround time, because, I mean, usually in RFPs, you have companies that you're sending RFPs to. I mean, do we know organizations that we would actually send the RFPs to?
Well, there's other, like similar to Surf, there's some that's down, who did Lehigh's Fields?
Arsenal.
I mean, they had shown some interest. I will be I think Surf has been fair in the negotiation. I think they've come, and so maybe we'll see that in that formal bid process. We've got to be careful, because Surf we've talked about what their bid kind of is, and so they've kind of put themselves a little out there. We'll just see as we come with the formal bid, I guess it kind of lets people know where the benchmark's at, but they've got to do some homework.
Yeah,
I
whatever we
would
do,
just
we ought to do it
request that we do
quick,
it
because we've
quickly.
been dragging this out forever.
Yeah.
We might have
And have
a
a
new
timeframe on
employee who doesn't have a ton yet on his to-do list.
I've already heard other things you've been assigning to Jay.
I think Jay should do this formal bid.
Yes, Jay should do this.
You just got an assignment.
But I do think we need to have a date, like by this date, if you don't have it in 2
If
weeks.
you just get that in by noon tomorrow.
Yes, noon tomorrow.
Do you think that it's reasonable by the end of April? Do you think we need to say the middle of May? Now, they're not going to be able to take over the field. Now, let's just kind of, whoever comes in, they can't take the fields this year. I mean, that's the only thing is, we've already got reservations, and we don't have Mountain Ridge done. So it's really, what we're talking about next year.
And like we talked about, 200,000 does not finish the soccer fields at Mountain Ridge, and so we need to make sure that we have enough money to finish the fields at Mountain Ridge, so those teams have a different place to go.
But
Right.
it'll help.
Oh, it helps.
Absolutely,
50%.
absolutely.
And I think we have a study that's going to help us understand our park impact fees, going to be done by May. So I mean, that should help us know, hey, did we free up some funds that way? Maybe we'll know by some donors. We're hoping to send some letters out to donors to ask, or those, that we're going to send out to some of the Highland residents saying, hey, would you be willing to donate? Hopefully we'll have some fill by then too. So we're going out to formal bid.
So I appreciate, Sarah, you're pushing to make it happen quickly. I think that's really positive. We also
agree.
should look at some possible basics that we want from a city standpoint. Do we want some minimum timeframes? Do we want some expectations of maintaining the field or not maintaining the field, putting a fence around it or not putting a fence around it? Do we want to leave it just a blank sheet? Sometimes that's not the best way because it's hard to compare them. So if you have some standard
Good point.
pieces, there may be some benefits to that. So those are some things that we ought to consider before putting that bid out. But
I
the
think
sooner
you
the
want to
better.
know how long of an agreement they would want, and the exclusivity piece, I think you would want to know, as well as the donation and the level of maintenance. Those, to me, are the main things that you would want.
And who else can maybe be on it? I mean, that's, so, okay.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, we now have,
So we spent a half hour on A. and
We
we've got-
can skip a couple of these, so really, I think we can skip B and C at this point and jump down
Let-
to
let
D if
me-
you would like.
We ought to have some discussion, though, as people are buying along the trail corridors, how wide that corridor has to be before you can put up a solid fence. I mean, I think in the ordinance now it's 40 feet. That's a really wide corridor. And then people are asking, gee, if it's 30, 32 feet, can we not put up a solid fence? Because you can look over a 6-foot fence regardless, or some people can, but I can't, but.
Do you want me to do it, or?
you want to discuss the fence? Right now, we are at 10:23. We probably will have some items we won't be able to, we'll have to probably go past 10 just to make sure we have some things put together.
Well, we can bring it back next council. I just think we need to do it. But I think we need to, my personal opinion, we need to talk about floods, because
We
we've
do.
already had one in Highland.
Okay, let's go through the bereavement leave, which is number 14D, which is bereavement leave. Councilmember Beals has asked for this to be a discussion item.
Yeah, I would just be interested in adding something to city employee policy that adds a provision for bereavement leave to be taken if there is a miscarriage or stillbirth. And that is what I would like to add. I think it's important.
I would also add on this stillborn, that it should be similar to a maternity leave. Because with the stillborn, the staff member actually goes through labor, actually goes, through the whole process, but has a death. And then, so they still need that appropriate recovery time. So I know this is a former labor and delivery nurse, as well as a daughter who experienced this herself.
So that would be a discussion item to be brought back.
Yes.
Okay. And it seems that we're amenable to discuss that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Flood preparation, Andy. You have video?
All right.
There you
So
go.
Mayor and Council, I know many of you are familiar with what happened this past Wednesday, so a week ago roughly. We had substantial rain, and there was essentially a flow pattern that came off the foothills by Ponce de Leon Drive and also at the top of Angels Gate, 2 separate events, the most substantial of which was the Ponce de Leon Drive, and the largest damage was sustained by Justin and Andrea Anderson. They're the home that's in the left on the left-hand photo. Their basement got flooded during the night, you know, when everything kind of started. By the next morning, we were alerted to the issue. The waters were rerouted with permission of, oddly enough, the parcel that we traded away behind the homes to obtain the trail for Hog Hollow. We had to get permission then to get on that piece and use that as a flood channel, and then Metropolitan Water District also gave us permission to use their parcel, which in the photo we're looking at the Metropolitan Water District.
Well, it was Alpine Joint Ventures, they gave us permission.
The Alpine Joint Ventures gave us permission, yes, and, sorry, I appreciate it, Mayor, and that, and so we temporarily rerouted the drainage. So for the interim period, we believe that we're in a stable condition, but it was a eye-opening. We all knew that this spring was going to be a large flood concern, but we kind of got an early reminder that it can happen at any time. So if you'll go with that. What we're planning is we're going to outreach the community through social media, through our city newsletter. The mayor sent a letter to the LDS stake presidents, all of which is attempting to alert the citizens to a few things. Number one, we are making sand and sandbags available to the public. And we are also going to deliver that sand and sandbags to certain targeted neighborhoods. So there will be locations that are generally available to the public and sandbags that are generally available to the public, and then we will target some specific locations we're going to look at. We're also going to hold a community sandbag filling day on April 15th. The citizens will be able to come to 2 locations, the parking lot near American Fork Canyon and also West Park Road, down near the area that we've just cleared up. They can come and either fill sandbags for their home, or they can come and fill some that we will then use for a stockpile for when and where it is needed. Can you go next? So what we're going to do is we have 11 locations around the city where we are going to place some sand and sandbags. What we're going to do in all of the locations where the labels are white is those are kind of specific targeted neighborhoods, and so we will place the sand, we will deliver some sandbags, we're going to put the sand in a little rubber tote there, kind of the waterproof rubber totes, and we will talk to those neighborhoods and say, okay, this sand is for your neighborhood to use as you seem fit. We've brought it closer to you, but it's too much for us as a city and our staff to fill all of these sandbags. The 2 orange locations are the locations where we will have the community sandbag filling day, and then we will, through the course of the event, so probably to midsummer, we will keep extra sand at the sand pile down in Highland Glen by the playground there, so that again, if anybody wants to come in and just get some sand, we can say, okay, go down to Highland Glen. There's a pile by the sand pile, or by the playground. You can fill all the sandbags you want to. Typically, we charge as a city for the sandbags. We've waived that for the intervening period, and just telling people to come in and get prepared.
Now, Andy, you mentioned that you're going to have the sand by the playgrounds. I thought it was over.
Well, the community sandbag filling day is going to be in West Park Road because we can handle the cars better there. But we're just going to have some piles by the playground that, if people are worried, it's, hey, come down to city offices, here's 50 sandbags, 100 sandbags, whatever they feel they need, and take your pickup down. There's a pile of sand waiting for you at Highland Glen. In the intervening time, we've actually already got sand in the community filling locations, and we're working on depositing some of this as we speak, trying to get ready so that we can be well ahead and give the neighborhoods time to respond. And one thing, and it was great how the community came together last week. The fire department came and helped, Public Works helped, community volunteers came, but I mean, our truck that we fill sandbags with was all geared up for snow. We had to take a couple hours and change it out. And then by the time we got the volunteers there and we got everything organized and the permissions, it took several hours to respond to the point where we could redirect that water. And so having the sandbags filled ahead of time and on location to where they can quickly be transported will make a big difference in our ability to respond quickly and address situations. Uniquely enough, or gratefully, I don't know what the right word is for the introduction to it, we also had Dave Myers, who we approved the sewer agreement with today. It lives in Highland, and he brought us several large sandbags that he has because of what his company does, whereby you have to lift them with a tractor, but they're things that we can redirect large flows with very safely, and he just donated those to the city.
Nice.
He's also going to give us some rocks and things from a pit that he owns, and so he's been very active in donating to us well, and I know that many others will as well. So that's our plan for as far as, where we're going to stage improvements through the city. We go to the next map. We also are going to make this map available. We're trying to figure out exactly how we're going to make it available, but what this is the colors kind of indicate the low spaces, and this is for the citizens that are a little bit worried would they get flooded. The red lines are kind of the major channels through the city. And then as the colors kind of get darker and concentrate, that's where the channels are. This is kind of high to low elevation in the city, so the purples are the lowest elevations in the city, and you'll notice that just geographically that's in the southwest, as you would all know, but it's also useful just to kind of identify where those channels create. So we will have this available. As you know, the city doesn't determine who's at risk for flooding, that's FEMA. And we'll make those maps available too, and we'll be there to assist. And we are going to hold a meeting on the 30th with the various emergency preparedness representatives from the stakes, so that we can have some interaction and feedback there. All of which is in an effort to help the community know that they are not alone. And that we are here to help and to assist. But it is going to take all of us, and it is going to take a community effort. So.
Can I add something real briefly, because I know we're running over time. But I do have a friend that works at CUP, and they're spooked enough about it that they're doing everything they can to lower the water levels in Jordanelle, Deer Creek, and Utah Lake, because that'll have to carry a lot of it. So this is a good chance to fill up the Great Salt Lake again.
Really well done this week, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was through the efforts of all, and I shared this with the mayor, shared it with the staff, but I think it bears repeating, and it's a really nice, warm and fuzzy. I was told by the Andersons, they were so grateful for the help that was expressed, and they said, last night we felt so alone, and today we feel the support of the community. So anyway, really nice, feel good. I wish it hadn't happened. I wish nobody had it, but we want to make sure that nobody feels alone.
Hey, Andy. So with the sandbag filling project, if there are other cities that don't have the resources and then are in a time of need, would we be able to have the ability to help those other cities if they do need our help?
Yes, we will respond. For our neighboring cities, we will do all we can to help them as well. I know that they will do all they can to help us. I actually had one city, Vineyard City, reached out to me Wednesday and, hey, do you need help? And, and I know that other cities will as well. And so, yes, very
Alpine
much so.
City actually put on their Facebook saying, hey, we're needing help sandbagging. So I thought that was very, as a good neighbor, I think your question, Kim, is we need to be a good neighbor. It was surprising as we got up to that Angel Gate, at 10 a.m. it wasn't running very heavy. I mean, we could see the water, but pretty well by 2 o'clock we had rivers. I mean, we were looking, there was a road, and Aaron was up there. We actually joked that there were some canoes or little things. We go, should we get on and actually take some really good pictures so they can see us moving in them? But yeah, it was had some water. This water is just so where, as it kind of came down, I got, a lot of you know Tanya College, that we'd done a kind of a little drainage by them. She sent video saying, hey, we got water here, but our new drainage we put in, which is nice, we put in kind of that whole new drainage. They were happy because it wasn't washing away a lot of the property there. Bull River did start having flooding, but they had someone back down there that had a backhoe that hurried up and got out and moved some of the stuff around and try to flood some of their low area, which would affect anything. So, I mean, this was all that Dry Creek area coming down, which is funny. This is not a river. This is, you know, I mean, it's with snow melt is where it becomes a river. This dries up by July. Our American Fork River, I hate to see what we're going to see or something. I mean, risks are at. Plus, we've asked them to put some announcements out, but also try to help get the whole community. So they should be communicating, not just, they should be communicating with all neighbors.
Sounds good.
So, any other questions on flooding? I would like to thank staff. I mean, our public works and our parks were up there. I mean, they got, and then as we got the sandbags put together, we had, when the help went out, we ended up, what did we figure, about 50 to 60 were there within about an hour. We had residents. And then our fire department, they showed up. We really appreciate, because once the sandbags got there, they were heavy. And we appreciate the firemen, getting out there and getting those, because they were able to kind of get out where they needed to get. We got them filled, but they needed to get out to where the areas were flooding. I mean, it was all hands on deck. Appreciate everyone that did that. I appreciate the community coming out and showing their support.
And I think that one thing it highlighted is the need for the community support, because you get about, when you're placing those sandbags, you get a few trips in and your body starts to feel those sandbags and you're hauling it, and then you really realize how much you appreciate your neighbors and friends that are there to help you that day. So,
and there was, when we came up on it early Wednesday morning, there were 4 women. It was pouring down rain. And I took some pictures, and I looked and I said, and Andy found a gentleman in the backyard. So we had, where the home had flooded, we looked back, and Andy saw a gentleman, so I better go talk to him. And I think he didn't know what to do. The water was just starting to come down. They were nervous about their basement going, and there were 4 women, it was pouring down, and their neighbors had come, and they're just there. We're just trying to help. But you could just see that they're just wondering where that help was going to come from. So I appreciate how fast everyone kicked in. So thank you.
Also, the governor did do an executive order that executive branch agency employees can get up to 8 hours of leave to help contribute to flood mitigation, so you can get paid for that as well. So if there are state employees within our city, outside of our city, if they can come help out on April 15th, they'll get paid for that.
That is awesome. Okay. Anything else on flood preparation? Okay. Are we okay? It is still 10:38. We okay going on to the Highland signs and the Alpine food storage update and calendar budget? I think we just got maybe another 10 minutes left. Is that okay for the council? The council, is that a yes? Kim, what do you say? Say ye Kim.
Aye.
Okay, we have a yes for Tim. Thank you, Tim. Okay, let's go ahead. Highland signs.
okay, we're going to go fast. This one's going to be a fast one. Okay, Mayor and Council, we have a number of welcome to Highland signs around town. We're going to go through the locations really fast. They don't all look the same. That's what I'm going to point out to you. Okay, we got the one on SR 92. We have several around town that have this appearance, and I'm going to go through. I'm not going to highlight each location, but these are all of them. You'll notice that a number of these are fairly repetitive. This is the one down by the Alpine Highway. Again, there's kind of that fairly similar theme. We were asked as a staff to look at what we could do to get one on North County Boulevard. Yes. We have talked to Boyer. The sign, the most logical location, I've got this architecture up because this is the Ridgeview signs. The most logical location to put the sign is just outside the new Murdoch pump station, the city pump station there. The reason why that's the most logical is because we have power there. If we ever choose to light it or do anything with it, we got power. It's also, it's not where you cross into Highland proper, but down where you cross into Highland proper is kind of in the middle of the developmental center field right now. And so this is kind of the first time that you cross into developed Highland, if you will. We have talked to Boyer. This sign would be on property that's owned by the Homeowners Association, but they are willing to allow the sign to go there. their request, if we could, would be to do a sign that complemented their architecture. We showed them this sign. We do have a number of these still in stock. They've been lying in the stockyard, so they, be a little dusty or whatever, but they're made of durable materials. So this would be, other than the cost of putting it together, this would be essentially free. But Ridgeview representative said, well, yeah, we'll work with you, but we'd prefer a sign that complemented our architecture.
What if we did the sign we've already got, but instead of putting the rock pillars, put up a brick that's complementary? Because the Ridgeview signs, I'm sorry, you can't read them. I mean, they're too small. I mean, the writing's too small.
And it's not aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Scott, I agree with you, though. I do like the brick.
I think it'd be nice to have a
Do the red
yeah.
brick go around here?
Red brick instead of the rock.
Yeah.
And just say,
Rock
welcome to
columns.
Highland red brick on both sides, because it looks like the Ridgeview brick.
Okay,
Yeah, we could use the Ridgeview brick and then use the sign, and I can go and propose that to
For
them.
bidding, I'm just going to tell you, just go to your mailbox, guys. Those are each $800 mailboxes on each side at $1,600. I'm just saying, I don't want to see a $5,000 to $10,000 bid come back, I'm trying to say.
Okay, all right, that's all I have, unless you want to discuss it more.
Nope,
Promise you
that's
quick.
fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I-
The next item is Alpine Food Storage. Here you go. This is the report from Shireen Wadsworth as of today. The designer is busy furnishing the space. We are narrowing down a point-of-sale system to install. Brand designer is hired and working. After weeks of not being able to find the right internet provider, we have internet going in tomorrow. We have been given a compromise on the fire marshal's demands, and we're still trying to just kind of work through that. Classroom is completely outfitted and ready to use. We are able to use the kitchen for preliminary use. Most of the painting is done. We are meeting with the team of refrigerator experts to install the walk-in coolers, and we are updating the lighting in the building. That is their report.
Okay.
What was their date that we gave them?
Well, they,
Remind me.
Hope to get in by mid-April.
so
but-
the date, we actually they're trying to get it done by April, but really, I think our date we agreed to was the end of June.
Right. That's in the motion.
The motion, I believe, was to let them go ahead with their business license that expired on June 30th, 2023. So, okay, next one is budget calendar.
Super brief. Kelly, can you move forward for me? So just wanted to remind you of some upcoming things, especially because they're different. They're not on Tuesdays. So next Thursday, again, Thursday, March 30th at 6 p.m., please come here. We will feed you, and we're going to give you the first draft of the fiscal year 2024 budget.
That's at 6 p.m., not 7 p.m.?
We had intended to do 6 p.m. unless, we haven't noticed it yet, though.
It's hard for me to get there by 6. I could get there by 6:37, because I have to come out of Salt Lake traffic.
On Thursdays?
Yeah, because I go up there in the afternoon. And I get stuck in the traffic every time I try to get here by 6.
7 o'clock?
Yeah,
Yeah, could we do it at 7 and just pass them out? Yeah.
Yeah.
7 o'clock, we will do that. Then, in the month of April, Tyler and I would love for you to come and meet with us one-on-one, go over questions, kind of answered some detail in regards to the budget. Stephanie's going to be reaching out to you in the next couple of days to get those dates set up now, actually, just so that you've got plenty of lead time on your personal calendars. And then Monday, again, this is different than normal, Monday, April 24th, and we'll change this to 7 p.m. If that would be the preference. This would be our actual official budget work session, where we would preview essentially what we discussed with you in those one-on-ones and the changes you requested. We would show you kind of the consensus of what those changes were in preparation for the tentative budget approval that following Tuesday, May 2nd.
Okay.
So it's on Monday, the 24th, because it's Planning Commission the next day.
It's Planning Commission the next day. I believe Brittany teaches on Wednesdays, and we wanted to give as much of the month of April as possible And we needed some time as staff to prepare for the packet is due, that Wednesday, Thursday for the following Tuesday.
And it has to be Monday, April 24th? I just have a kid's birthday that day.
Could we do the 27th?
Not if you want it in the tentative, but not if you.
Budget by the 2nd.
Right, because we've got to do the packet that Wednesday, Thursday. So, sorry, pulling up the
the
calendar
20th?
of that.
I think.
So you are.
Therefore.
Are you saying the 26th might work for you, Brittany? Yes.
No, 26 won't work. I fly out on the 26th. 20th.
Oh, hold it. When is ULTC?
It's the previous week, and that's the other concern.
I'm there also.
Some of you may be in St. George for the ULCT conference, the 19th through the 21st.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. Okay.
Monday's
Lots
okay
of
for me.
conflicts, and so we
I'll
tried
put
to.
it on there. I'll
Yeah.
just put it on.
Monday, 24th at 7 PM.
7 PM.
At 7 PM instead of 6 PM on the 24th?
If that's what council would prefer, we're happy to
7
accommodate that
PM
way.
works better for me. But
Because
Monday's okay.
these are special days, we are happy to provide dinner as part of that, so.
Okay.
You want to move it up to 6:30 with dinner? Or you want to keep 7?
I can do 6:30 if you'd like that.
What do you want, Kim?
Kim wants to go home. Let's do 7 and eat while we're talking.
Okay. I don't
Chatter.
see anything else. We kind of went through some of the different dates. Any other item that needs to come before the council?
No, sir?
Okay. Seeing none, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Go ahead.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.